She was the only person in that hospital who didn't flinch when Adrian Volkov walked through the doors with blood on his hands and death in his eyes. Every doctor stepped back. Every guard reached for a weapon. Every patient held their breath. But Nurse Elena Vance looked him dead in the face and said one word that hadn't been said to him in 7 years. No. Before we go further into this story, if you're watching from any city in the world, drop your city name in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, subscribe, and stay with me until the very end, because what happens next will break your heart and put it back together again. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It came down on Brightmoor City the way grief comes down on a widow. Heavy, steady, indifferent to whether anyone could bear it. Water rushed along the curbs of 7th Avenue, pooling around storm drains clogged with November leaves, reflecting the red and blue strobes of ambulances that hadn't stopped arriving since sundown. St. Jerome Memorial Hospital sat at the corner of 7th and Halston like an old fighter that had taken too many punches. Gray stone, flickering fluorescents, a sign out front where the M in Memorial had gone dark 2 winters ago and nobody had bothered to fix it. Inside, the emergency room was losing. Not in the dramatic way people imagined from television. There were no slow-motion shots, no swelling music. It was losing in the small, exhausting ways that real hospitals lose. A printer out of paper, a gurney with a stuck wheel, an IV bag that ran dry because the nurse assigned to room 4 had been pulled into room 7 and nobody had caught it in time. Elena Vance caught it. She always caught it. She was moving down the corridor with a chart pressed against her hip. Her dark hair pulled back so tight it made her scalp ache when she noticed the old man in 4 through the open door, his mouth slightly open, his hand limp on the sheet. The IV line running clear when it should have been running saline. She swore under her breath, a quick, tired word, not loud enough for anyone to hear, and ducked into the room. "Mr. Abernathy," she said, her voice softer than she felt. "You still with me?" The old man's eyes fluttered open, watery blue, confused. "I'm here," she told him. "I'm right here. Just need to get you a fresh bag, okay?" "My daughter," he whispered. "Is my daughter coming?" Elena's hands were already moving. New bag, clean line, tape smoothed down over thin skin that bruised if you looked at it wrong. She didn't know if his daughter was coming. She didn't know if he had a daughter. The intake form said next of kin, unknown. "She's on her way," Elena said. "You just rest." It was a small lie. She had told 100 of them that night. She would tell 100 more before her shift ended. Somewhere she had stopped counting, and somewhere after that she had stopped feeling guilty about it. She was 31 years old. She had been a nurse for 9 of those years. Her apartment was 6 blocks east, above a laundromat that shook the floors every time the industrial dryers spun up, and she had not been home in 36 hours. There was a plant on her kitchen windowsill that she was pretty sure had given up on her. There was a man named David who had given up on her about 8 months earlier, saying things like, "You're never here and it's like I'm dating a ghost," and she had not argued with him because he was right. There was a brother in Fresno who called on birthdays. That was the extent of the people in her life. She didn't have time to mind. "Vance," Dr. Patel's voice cracked down the hall. "Trauma 2 now, GSW, abdominal. Coming!" She squeezed the old man's hand once. He didn't squeeze back, and she was out the door. Trauma 2 was a mess. The patient was maybe 20 years old, Hispanic, track marks on his forearms, a wound in his gut the size of a quarter leaking through the gauze Dr. Patel was pressing down on. The kid was talking in Spanish, fast and slurred. Elena's Spanish was good enough to catch most of it. He was calling for his mother. "Pressure's dropping," Nurse Chen said from the monitor. 80/50. "Get me 2 units, Oneg, and page the OR," Patel snapped. "Vance, hold this. Hold this hard." Elena's hands replaced Patel's on the wound. The blood was warm through the gauze. It always surprised her how warm it was. 9 years, and it still surprised her. "Mijo," she said to the kid, leaning down. "Mírame. Mírame a mí. Look at me. Look at me." His eyes rolled toward her, brown, wet, terrified. "Vas a estar bien," she said. "You're going to be okay." Another lie. She didn't know if he would be. She pressed harder. Quédate conmigo. Stay with me. He tried to say something. She leaned closer. His breath smelled like blood and old cigarettes. Mama, he whispered. I know, Elena said. I know, mijo. She's coming. The doors to the trauma bay banged open behind her. Orderlies with the crash cart. A surgical resident Elena didn't recognize. Patel was already barking orders. Elena stepped back, her hands in her scrubs and the front of her sneakers slick with the kid's blood, and watched them wheel him out toward the elevators. She stood there a second too long. She always stood there a second too long after one like that. It was a habit she had picked up from an older nurse years ago, a woman named Trudy who had told her, "Sweetheart, you gotta take a breath after every one of them, good or bad, alive or not. Otherwise, you stop noticing, and the day you stop noticing is the day you should quit." Trudy had died of a stroke in the parking lot 2 summers ago. Elena still took the breath. 1, 2, 3. Then she turned, wiped her hands on a towel she grabbed from the counter, and walked back out into the hallway. That was when the front doors of the emergency department blew open like something had kicked them. Momt. She heard it before she saw it. The sound of the wet city coming in. The hiss of rain on asphalt. The whine of a sedan's engine not quite shut off. The shouting of at least 3 different voices overlapping each other in the kind of aggression that a hospital administrator would later call disruption and a cop would call a problem waiting to happen. Elena's head came up the way any animal's head comes up at the sound of wrongness. 4 men came through the sliding doors. 3 of them she clocked in a half second. Big, broad, wet-shouldered, the kind of men whose suits cost more than her car and whose shoes had never been used to run for a bus. Their coats were dark. Their faces were not interesting. They had the posture of men who expected rooms to rearrange themselves around their arrival. The 4th one was the one the rooms rearranged for. He walked between them and slightly ahead, and there was blood on his white shirt, a wide dark bloom across his left side, and he was walking like it didn't matter. Elena's brain did the triage assessment before she was consciously doing it. Conscious, ambulatory, respiration elevated but steady, significant blood loss but not arterial, or he'd be down already. He was tall, lean in the way predators were lean, black hair cut short at the sides, longer on top, pushed back from a forehead that had a thin line of dried blood running down from the hairline. His jaw had not been shaved in at least a day. His eyes. Elena had seen a lot of eyes in 9 years. His were the coldest she had ever looked into. Gray. Not gray-blue. Not gray-green. Gray like a rifle barrel. He scanned the waiting room once, the crying baby, the drunk in the corner, the woman with the ice pack on her wrist, the triage window where Maria Delgado sat behind bulletproof glass with her mouth slowly opening. And then he saw Elena, and his gaze stopped. It wasn't a long look, maybe a full second, but something in her chest did a thing she would think about for years afterward. A small, cold animal thing. Her body, it turned out, knew what her mind had not yet put into words. That is a man who kills people. I need a doctor. His voice was low, accented, something Eastern European buried under years of American English, worn down but not gone. Now. Maria behind the glass had gone still. Elena could see her hand trembling where it rested on the intake keyboard. Behind Elena, Dr. Patel had stepped halfway out of Trauma 2 and gone perfectly silent. She didn't turn to look at him. She could feel him deciding, the way a man decides whether he's the sort of man who rises to a moment or whether he's the sort who steps back and lets someone else take it. He stepped back. One of the big men peeled off from the group and walked, too calmly, too deliberately, up to the triage window. He put a hand flat on the glass. He leaned down so his mouth was near the speaker. My friend needs attention, he said. Right now, you understand? Maria's mouth worked. Sir, we have a triage process. He doesn't wait. Elena was already moving. She didn't make the decision to move exactly. She just moved. Her legs carried her across the waiting room with the same automatic forward momentum they had used 1,000 times before, to 1,000 patients in 1,000 different stages of panic. Her chart was still against her hip. Her sneakers still had the Hispanic kid's blood on them. She stopped about 4 feet from the man with the gray eyes, which was closer than was comfortable and farther than would be polite. Sir, she said, His eyes came back to her. Up close, they were even worse. Not empty, that was the wrong word, but quiet. The way a lake is quiet in the moment before something surfaces. "I'm Nurse Vance. Where are you hurt?" He didn't answer for a beat. He was looking at her the way you look at something unexpected on a shelf where you did not expect anything to be. His mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile, more like a revision of an expression he had been about to make. Left side. Ribs. "Gunshot?" "Knife." "How long ago?" 20 minutes. She nodded once. "Come with me. Your men wait out here." The man at the triage window made a sound, something like a laugh without any humor in it. The one nearest the gray-eyed man, who was clearly the most senior of the three guards, a heavy-set man in his 40s with a crooked nose, turned toward Elena with an expression that suggested he had not heard her correctly. "His men do not wait," the heavy man said. "His men go where he goes." "His men wait," Elena said. Her voice was flat. She did not look at the heavy man. She kept her eyes on the one with the blood on his shirt because he was the patient, and the patient was the only person in this room she was obligated to address. "This is an emergency department. No one goes past those doors unless they need medical care or they are a medical professional. That is hospital policy, and it is state law. Your men wait or you don't get treated." The waiting room had gone so quiet she could hear the fluorescent light above her buzzing like a wasp. "Do you know who he is?" the heavy man said. "No." Elena turned her head fractionally toward him, just enough to mean it. "And I don't care. If he's bleeding, I'll stop the bleeding. But I'll do it my way, in my trauma bay, on my terms. Those are the rules here. Everywhere else in the city, I'm sure the rules are different. This is not everywhere else." She had said it without lifting her voice. She had said it the way a woman says it when she has been awake for 36 hours and has already watched a 20-year-old boy bleed out onto her hands and does not have the stamina tonight for men who think fear is something other people hand them like a door being opened. There was a silence. Then slowly, the man with the gray eyes, Adrian Volkov, though Elena did not yet know his name, raised one hand. A small gesture, 2 fingers lifted from his hip. The 3 men behind him went still. The heavy one closed his mouth. The one at the triage window stepped back from the glass. "She is right, Dmitri," Adrian said. He did not look away from Elena. "Wait here." "Sir?" "Wait here." Dmitri's jaw worked. He didn't argue. He stepped back toward the row of plastic chairs against the wall, where a woman with a bleeding child was pretending very hard not to be listening. Adrian's gray eyes stayed on Elena. Something had shifted in them. A small thing. She could not have put a word to it. "After you, Miss Vance." "Nurse Vance," she said. And she turned and she walked and she didn't look back to see if he was following because you didn't look back at dogs either. You walked and they came. And if they didn't come, that was their problem and not yours. He came. She put him in trauma 3 because 2 still had blood on the floor. "Shirt off," she said, pulling gloves on, already turning toward the supply cart. "Sit on the table." He did not sit on the table. He stood with his back half turned to the door, scanning the corners of the room. The vents, the window, the cabinets. The way a man scans a room he intends to either leave quickly or never leave at all. His hand rested lightly on his belt, and there was something under the dark coat on that side that Elena decided not to ask about. She went and got the irrigation tray. "Shirt," she said again without turning. "You are not afraid." She set the tray down on the rolling cart. She pulled the paper cover off the tray. Her hands, she noticed distantly, were absolutely steady. "I don't have the time to be afraid, Mr. Volkov. Mr. Volkov. I have 31 patients in this ED tonight, and 4 of them are probably going to die before sunrise, and 3 of those 4 are in worse shape than you. So either I treat you or I don't, but I'm not going to waste my night having a conversation about whether you're scary." She turned. She gestured at the exam table. "Shirt, please." He looked at her. He looked at her for what felt like a long time. His face gave away nothing, but she had the oddest sense that behind the face he was recalculating. Like a chess player who had moved a piece and then looked up and noticed that the board was larger than he had thought. He sat down on the exam table. He shrugged out of the dark coat, and she saw the gun in the shoulder holster, and she did not let any expression touch her face. He unbuttoned the white shirt, slowly, with fingers that she noticed were not quite steady, a detail that told her more about his blood loss than his blood pressure would have. He peeled the shirt off his left side carefully. The wound was ugly, a long, clean laceration running from under his ribs toward his back, about 6 inches long, the edges gaping. Someone had gotten him with a real knife, a sharp one, and had known how to use it. He had lost more blood than he was admitting. "This needs stitches," she said. "A lot of them, and you need a CT to make sure the blade didn't nick anything on its way through. When did you last eat?" "Is not relevant. It's relevant if we have to put you under." "You will not put me under." She glanced up at him. His face was calm, but his skin had gone the particular color of skin that was 2 hours away from going into shock. "Mr. Volkov, I can stitch you awake." "That's fine, but if you've got internal bleeding, we're going to need to—" "I am not going into your CT machine." His voice had not risen. It did not need to. "I am not going into your OR. I am not spending the night in your hospital. You will close the cut. I will leave. That is what will happen." Elena set down the forceps she had been about to pick up. She put her hands on her hips. She had never in her life put her hands on her hips at a patient, but she was tired, and he was being stupid, and being stupid was one of the things she had the least patience for in the world. "Mr. Volkov, with respect, if you walk out of here tonight with internal bleeding, you'll be dead by morning in the back of whatever fancy car you came in. I don't know what your alternative plan is. I don't know if you've got a private physician who's better than this hospital, which, fair, a lot of people are better than this hospital, but what I do know is that I can't treat you properly unless I can rule out a perforation. So either you let me do my job, or you sign AMA and you walk out of here, and the next nurse who sees you will be whoever's working in the morgue." His mouth did the almost smile thing again. "AMA?" "Against medical advice. It's a form. I hand it to you, you sign it, and then whatever happens next is on you and not on me, legally." "You're very concerned about legality." "I'm very concerned about not losing my license because some man with a gun under his coat decided to bleed out on my watch." There was a beat, then he laughed. It was not a big laugh. It was a short one, almost surprised, like it had escaped him without his permission. And she thought, though she wasn't sure, that his guards, somewhere on the other side of the door, could probably hear it, and that it was probably a sound they had not heard in a long time. "Miss Vance, Nurse Vance, Nurse Vance." His eyes were on her now in a different way, not the rifle barrel way, a way that was still cold but curious inside the cold. "You do not know who I am." "I told you, I don't care." "You will. Probably." She picked up the forceps again. "But not tonight. Tonight I'm going to clean this and close it and get you upright before your pressure drops any further, and then I'm going to ask you one more time if you'll let me rule out internal bleeding, and you can say no if you want to. But first," she gestured at the wound, "lay back. This is going to hurt." He lay back. She worked in silence after that. She irrigated the wound, and he did not make a sound. She probed the edges, and he did not make a sound. She injected lidocaine along the laceration, and his jaw tightened once, just once, and he did not make a sound. She had worked on men who screamed at a needle stick. He was not one of those men. She stitched him in a single clean line, 37 stitches, counting under her breath the way she always did because the counting kept her hands even. While she worked, his eyes stayed on her face, not her hands. Her face. She was aware of it the way you're aware of sunlight on the side of your cheek. "You have not asked me how it happened," he said after a while. "Not my business." "You have not asked my name before I gave it. Also not my business. You have not asked whether my men are dangerous." She cut a suture. She tied the knot. She looked up at him. "Mr. Volkov, everyone's dangerous. The drunk in my waiting room has a butter knife in his pocket and a head full of meth. The 16-year-old in bed 12 has a boyfriend who put her mother in the ICU last year and is going to put her there next. The cop who brought in the OD case 2 hours ago has killed 2 people in the line of duty, and one of them was probably innocent. Everybody's dangerous. You're just better dressed about it." There was a silence. Then very quietly he said, "Where did you learn to talk to people like this?" She tied off the last stitch. She snipped the thread. She straightened up and stepped back and peeled off her gloves one at a time, dropping them into the biohazard bin with the small, efficient motion of a woman who had done it 10,000 times. I grew up with 4 brothers, Mr. Volkov. 3 of them are alive. The one who isn't got shot by a guy who looked a lot like you. She met his eyes. I learned to talk to people like this because if I didn't, people like you ran everything. She did not know, as she said it, that she had just changed the course of her life. She did not know, as she said it, that a man named Adrian Volkov, who in certain parts of Brightmoor City was called Volk, the wolf, and in other parts was simply called him, because some names did not require elaboration, had not been spoken to like that by anyone, man or woman, civilian or soldier, friend or enemy, in 7 years. She only knew that he was staring at her with an expression she could not read, and that the silence in the room had gone very strange, and that her hands were finally starting to shake. She turned away before he could see. "I'll get you the AMA paperwork," she said. "You should drink some water. There's a cup by the sink." She walked out. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall. She pressed her back to the cinder block, and she tilted her head up, and she closed her eyes, and she breathed. 1, 2, 3. Trudy's count. She did it twice. She did it 3 times. Her hands, which had been so steady, were shaking now as if they had been saving it up. "Vance." Patel at her elbow. His voice was low. "Vance, what the hell?" She opened her eyes. "What? What the hell?" He was pale under the brown of his skin. He looked like a man who had just watched someone juggle knives over a baby. "Do you know who that is? Do you know who you just talked to like that?" "He told me his name, yeah. Adrian Volkov." "Volkov. Okay." "Jesus Christ, Elena. Volkov as in the Volkov Syndicate. Volkov as in the guy who owns half the docks. As in the guy whose name you don't say out loud in the wrong bar. As in the guy the feds have been trying to put away for 6 years and can't because every witness—" Patel made a small, helpless gesture with both hands. "Every witness disappears, Elena." "Okay. Okay. Okay. What do you want me to say, Raj? I treated him. He's fine. He's going to sign AMA and he's going to walk out of here, and that's the end of it." "That is not the end of it. That is not the end of it." Patel had gone from pale to something worse. "You talked back to him. In front of his men. You— Elena, people don't do that. People don't do that and just go home after." "Well, I'm going home after." "Are you?" She didn't answer. She couldn't, entirely. Because underneath the adrenaline, which was draining out of her now like dishwater, leaving her weirdly hollow, there was a small, slow thinking part of her that had just noticed something Patel was noticing too. She had stood up to a monster. Monsters didn't forget when you did that. She did not go back into the trauma room. She handed the AMA paperwork to Chen and asked her to take it in, and Chen gave her a look that said, "You owe me," and Elena gave her a look that said, "I know," and she went down the hall to the supply closet, and she closed the door behind her, and she sat down on an overturned bucket in the dark, and she put her face in her hands. She did not cry. She did not really shake after the first minute. She just sat there and breathed in the dark, listening to the hum of the hospital around her. The distant bell of an elevator, the page for Dr. Ramos to the OR, the tinny sound of someone's radio playing soft music down the hall. She thought about the Hispanic kid and his mother who was not coming. She thought about Mr. Abernathy and the daughter who did not exist. She thought about her brother Mateo, who had been 22 years old when they pulled him out of the trunk of a car in the Riverside district with 2 holes in him and his hand still tied, and about her mother who had screamed in a language Elena had never heard her mother use before, and about the man in the suit who had stood at the edge of the crime scene tape with his hands in his pockets and watched, and about how nobody had ever said that man's name out loud in their house. Not ever. Not once. Not in 10 years. As if not saying it could make it stop being true. She had been 21. She had decided that night that she would not ever again be the kind of person who lowered her voice for men like that. She had kept the promise, mostly. Tonight she had kept it harder than she ever had before. She didn't know if she regretted it. A knock on the closet door. "Vance, you in there?" "Chen." "Yeah." "He's gone." "Okay." A pause. "He left something for you." Elena lifted her head. She stared at the dark line of the door. What? Just come out. She came out. Chen was standing in the hallway with her arms crossed, her face carefully neutral in the way a nurse's face goes neutral when she wants you to know she has opinions but is too professional to voice them. She nodded at the nursing station. On the counter, next to the pen cup and the binder of extension numbers, and the half-empty box of graham crackers that somebody had brought in for a diabetic patient and forgotten about, sat a small white envelope. Elena walked over. She picked it up. It was not sealed. Inside was a single sheet of hotel stationery, cream-colored, heavy. On it, in blue ink in a handwriting that was clean and narrow and slanted slightly to the right, were 3 words. "Thank you, nurse." That was all. No name, no phone number, no signature. She stood there for a long time holding it. Chen behind her said quietly, "Elena?" "Yeah." "You should be careful." "I know." "No, Elena. I mean it. You should be. Really careful, for a while. Maybe a long while." "I know, Ming." She folded the note along its existing crease. She slid it into the pocket of her scrub top, against her chest, where it sat like a small warm weight for the rest of the night. She did not take it out again. She did not look at it again. But she was aware of it through every patient and every vitals check and every coffee refill, all the way until the gray light of morning came up through the windows of the ER and her shift finally, mercifully, ended. She walked home through wet streets. The rain had stopped sometime around 4, and the city was in that early morning stillness it only ever got on Sundays, when the bars were closed and the buses were running on reduced schedules, and the only people on the sidewalks were dog walkers and bakers, and the occasional exhausted nurse. The sky was the color of old pewter. The gutters were full of yellow leaves. She bought a coffee at the place on the corner. The boy behind the counter, a college kid named Marcus, who had been flirting with her without commitment for about 8 months, said, "Rough one?" "Yeah." "You look like you've seen a ghost, Nurse Vance." Felt like it. He gave her an extra shot for free. She didn't argue. She walked the last 3 blocks slowly, holding the cup with both hands for the warmth. Her apartment building came up on her right. 4 stories, red brick, the laundromat on the ground floor already humming with the Sunday wash. She dug her key out of her bag, and she stopped. On the small stone step in front of her door, tucked against the frame where the wind could not have blown it, sat a single white rose. She stood very still. She looked up the street. She looked down it. A woman was walking a small gray dog on the far side. A delivery truck was idling at the corner. Nobody was looking at her. Nobody, as far as she could tell, had ever been looking at her. She crouched down. There was no note with the rose, no ribbon, no card. It was simply there, fresh cut. The stem trimmed clean at an angle, the petals just beginning to open. Her hand, reaching for it, stopped halfway. She pulled her hand back. She stood up. She stepped over the rose, unlocked her door, went inside, and climbed the stairs to her apartment without looking back. Inside, she set her coffee on the counter. She took the folded note out of her pocket and she set it next to the coffee. She stood at her kitchen window for a long time, looking down at the step where the white rose still sat, small and bright against the wet stone. She did not go back down to get it. She did not throw it away. She just stood there, watching it, until the sun came fully up and a kid on a bicycle passed by and knocked it into the gutter with his front tire without noticing. And the rose bobbed once in the gray water of the gutter and then floated slowly away toward the storm drain. Only then did Elena Vance turn away from the window. She sat down at her small kitchen table. She put her hands flat on the wood. She looked at the note in her own handwriting. No, not her handwriting, his. And she realized, with a small, cold clarity that she would remember later as the last quiet moment of her old life, that whatever had started in that trauma bay 3 hours ago was not something she was going to be able to walk away from. He had written, "Thank you, nurse." But what he had meant, and what she had understood in the part of her that had not wanted to understand it, was "I see you." And men like Adrian Volkov, once they saw you, did not ever quite look away. Somewhere across the city, in a penthouse she could not yet imagine, a man with 37 stitches under his ribs was standing at a window of his own, looking down at the same gray morning, a glass of something dark and expensive untouched in his hand. He was thinking about a woman with tired eyes and steady hands, and a voice that had not bent for him. He was thinking about the way she had said nurse, correcting him, and the way her mouth had gone hard around the word brother. He was thinking that he had not in a very long time met a person who was not afraid of him. He was thinking that he wanted to see her again. And in the small pale light of her kitchen, 6 blocks east, Elena Vance put her face in her hands for the second time that morning, and she did not cry because she did not cry anymore. About anything. But she sat there for a long time with her eyes closed, and she listened to the shaking of the laundromat under her floor, and she waited for the feeling in her chest. Small, cold, alert, like an animal that had lifted its head at the wrong sound in the trees, to pass. It did not pass. It would not pass for a long time. She slept 4 hours and dreamed of nothing she could remember. And when she woke up, the light in her apartment was a flat afternoon gray, and her phone had 17 missed calls. 3 of them were from her mother. 2 were from her brother Javier in Phoenix. 1 was from Patel. The rest were numbers she did not recognize, and she sat up in bed and scrolled through them with a slow sinking in her stomach because she already understood, without being told, that the story had gotten out. Hospitals leaked. They leaked the way old pipes leaked. Slowly at first, and then all at once, usually in the middle of the night, usually onto something important. She did not listen to the voicemails. She got up. She made coffee in the little stovetop pot her grandmother had sent her from Oaxaca the Christmas before she died, and she stood at the counter drinking it black while the pigeons on the fire escape squabbled over something one of them had dropped. She did not look at the kitchen window. She did not look down at the step. She had decided sometime between the 3rd hour of sleep and the 4th that she was going to be a person who did not look. She was going to be a person who went to work and came home and did her job and did not think about the man with the gray eyes and did not think about the rose and did not think about the 3 words on the piece of hotel stationery that were still sitting on her kitchen table next to a ring of coffee and a half-dead basil plant. That plan lasted about 2 hours. She was getting ready for her evening shift, clean scrubs, hair braided back, 2 protein bars in her bag because she knew she was not going to sit down again until sunrise, when someone knocked on her door. Not the buzzer from the street, the door. Somebody had gotten into the building. She froze with her hand halfway to her shoelace. "Elena, it's me. Open up. It's freezing out here." Ming Chen. Elena exhaled. She opened the door. Ming came in carrying 2 paper cups and a bag from the banh mi place around the corner, and she did not take off her coat. She set the food down on the table and she looked at Elena, and Elena looked at her, and neither of them said anything for a second. 2 men came into the ED this morning, Ming said, around 11. Asked for you by name. Elena sat down. She sat down hard, on the arm of the couch, because her legs had decided she was going to sit, and her brain had not been consulted. "What did you tell them?" "That you weren't on shift, that I didn't know your schedule, that I wasn't permitted to give out personal information about staff." Ming's mouth went tight. "One of them, the heavy one, the one with the nose, he smiled at me. He said, 'Of course, we would not want to cause any trouble for Nurse Vance. We only wish to express our gratitude.' And then he set this on the counter, and they walked out." She reached into her coat pocket, and she pulled out an envelope. It was the same stationery, cream-colored, heavy. Elena did not take it. "Ming, I know. I can't." "I know, Elena, I know. That's why I brought it to you and not to administration. I figured you should decide what to do with it before it becomes a thing." Ming set the envelope on the table, next to the banh mi, next to the first note which Elena had not put away. "But it's going to become a thing. You know that." "Yeah." "Patel's already talked to Dr. Ramirez." "What?" "This morning." Patel was shook, Elena. He wanted to document it. He wanted to make sure that if anything, you know, that there was a record. Elena closed her eyes. Patel meant well. Patel always meant well. Patel was the kind of man who would document a tornado in the middle of a tornado, who would say for the record while the building came down around him, because he believed, deep in his bones, that paperwork was a form of protection. It was not a stupid belief. In most circumstances, it was even a correct one. But she did not think, in this particular circumstance, that paperwork was going to protect anyone. She thought paperwork was going to get somebody fired or somebody hurt or both. "Did he name Volkov?" she asked. "Not in the report. He said a patient with known organized crime affiliations who refused treatment against medical advice. That's the language Ramirez used when she wrote it up. Okay. Okay? Ming, what do you want me to say? It's done. He wrote what he wrote. I can't unwrite it. Ming was watching her closely. Ming had been her friend for 6 years, had cried with her in a break room after a bad pediatric code, had shown up to Mateo's funeral with her husband and had not said anything dumb, had covered for Elena more times than Elena could count. Ming was not a woman who came over in the middle of a Sunday afternoon carrying banh mi and a mystery envelope out of professional courtesy. Elena. Ming sat down on the couch next to her. Are you okay? I'm fine. You're not fine. You haven't been fine since last night. Patel said you went into the supply closet after and you didn't come out for 20 minutes. I came out. Elena. Elena looked at her. I'm going to go to work tonight, she said. I'm going to do my job. I'm not going to open that envelope. If he sends me another one, I'm not going to open that one either. I'm going to keep my head down, and I'm going to not be interesting, and eventually he's going to forget I exist because men like that forget. They forget faster than ordinary people, Ming. They move on. Somebody else will annoy him, somebody worse than me, and he'll lose interest, and this will all pass. That's what's going to happen. Ming looked at her for a long moment. You don't believe that? No, Elena said. But I'm going to say it until it's true. It was not going to be true. She knew that walking to the hospital through the long blue dusk, her breath coming out in small pale clouds because the weather had turned and winter was finally starting to mean it. She knew it when she badged into the staff entrance and the security guard, Victor, who had been working the door at St. Jerome for 15 years and knew everybody's grandchildren by name, looked up at her and did not meet her eyes. She knew it when she walked into the locker room and 2 junior nurses went suddenly quiet and then suddenly busy with their lockers, not quite looking at her. She knew it when Dr. Ramirez, the nursing director, a small tough woman in her 60s with iron gray hair and the calm of a woman who had managed floors through 2 epidemics and a hurricane, caught her in the hallway outside the break room and said quietly, Vance, my office, before your shift. Elena followed her. Ramirez's office was small and neat and smelled like the herbal tea she drank constantly, and she closed the door behind Elena and did not sit down behind her desk. She stood in front of it, her arms folded, and she looked at Elena the way she had looked at her once before, 5 years ago, when Elena had taken a swing, verbally, at a surgeon who had called her honey during a code. I'm not writing you up, Ramirez said. Okay. But we need to talk about last night. Okay. Dr. Patel documented the incident. I reviewed the chart. For what it's worth, I think you handled it correctly within the scope of your role. You did your job. You did it well. Ramirez took a breath. But I also spoke to our legal department this morning, and I spoke to 2 people at the department, and what I'm being told is that Mr. Volkov is not a patient we want to treat at this hospital again, if it can be avoided. If he comes back, we will of course not deny him care, but there are channels we will use, private channels. And you, Vance, you will not be assigned to him. Am I clear? Yes. If he comes in on your shift, you page me. You page Dr. Hahn, you do not treat him. I don't care if he's exsanguinating in the hallway. You page. You understand? Elena understood. What she also understood, under the understanding, was that Ramirez was trying to protect her. Ramirez was a woman who had worked her whole life around the kind of men whose names she was now not quite saying out loud. And Ramirez knew, the way Elena's mother had known, and Trudy had known, and every older woman Elena had ever worked with had known, that the way you survived around a man like Adrian Volkov was to be uninteresting to him, to become, as much as possible, a wall. Walls did not get noticed. Walls did not get sent roses. Walls did not get followed home. I understand, Elena said. Ramirez looked at her a second longer. Her face softened, just a fraction. Eat something tonight, Vance, and for the love of... just take a lunch, please. Elena nodded. She left the office. She worked her shift. She ate half a protein bar at 2 a.m, standing at the nursing station. The envelope stayed in her bag, unopened, in her locker. When her shift ended at 7 a.m., she walked home the long way, through streets that were just starting to fill up with morning traffic, and when she came up her block, she made herself look at the step, deliberately, to see if there was anything on it. There was nothing. She exhaled for what felt like the first time in 12 hours. She let herself into her apartment. She took a shower so hot her skin went red. She climbed into bed in one of Mateo's old t-shirts that she had not been able to throw away in 10 years, and she slept. The next night, nothing. The night after, nothing. By the end of the week, she was starting to think that maybe she had been right. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe the rose had been a gesture, nothing more. A small courtly thank you from a man who had been raised with old manners underneath the new blood. And she had been flattering herself, if flattering was the word, to think that she had mattered to him in any way that would persist. Men forgot. Dangerous men forgot faster than anyone. She had said so to Ming. She had said so to herself. She was starting to believe it. She was, of course, entirely wrong. Look, he came in on a Thursday. Not on her shift. Not to the ED. He came in on a Thursday afternoon at 4:15 through the main lobby of St. Jerome Memorial, past the volunteer at the information desk who did not look up from her crossword, past the gift shop and the little chapel at the end of the corridor, and he went up to the 4th floor, where the surgical step-down unit was. The charge nurse on 4, a woman named Bethany, who had been at the hospital 2 years and did not yet know what everyone else knew, looked up from her computer and saw a tall man in a dark coat standing at her desk, and she thought he was a pharmaceutical rep. "Can I help you?" "I have a follow-up appointment," he said. "Name?" "Volkov. Adrian." Bethany typed it in. Nothing came up. She typed it again. "I'm not seeing... I am not in your system." He smiled at her. It was a small, polite smile. "I have a follow-up with Nurse Vance." Bethany, who was 26, who had been a nurse for 2 years, who had never been spoken to by a man who had that particular quality of stillness under the charm, Bethany said, "Oh, well, she works in the ED, actually, not up here. Let me just... I know. I prefer to see her in a less chaotic environment. She's not... I mean, we don't really do follow-ups on the floor. That's not how... Can you page her?" "I can't page an ED nurse to the 4th floor for a... Please." He did not raise his voice. He did not lean forward. He only said please, and Bethany later would tell her husband that she did not know why she had picked up the phone, except that she had looked at the man's eyes and had suddenly felt that the best thing she could do with her afternoon was make the call he had asked her to make, and then not think about it anymore. The page came over the hospital PA a minute later. "Nurse Vance to 4 North. Nurse Vance to 4 North." Elena was in the ED with a laceration on her second hand of the morning, a construction worker whose glove had slipped, and she looked up at the ceiling when she heard it. She finished the stitch she was on. She taped the bandage. She told the man he needed to keep it dry for 48 hours. She handed him off to discharge. Then she walked to the stairwell, because she could not stand being in an elevator at that particular moment, and she climbed 4 flights of stairs at a pace that was not quite a run. And when she came out on 4 North, she saw him standing at the nursing station, talking quietly to Bethany, who was laughing. Laughing. In the small, flustered way a woman laughs when she is being charmed by a man whose charm she has not yet realized is tactical. Elena stopped 10 feet away. "Mr. Volkov." He turned. He was wearing a gray wool coat over a dark sweater. His hair had grown a little. The small line at his hairline from that first night was gone, healed. He looked rested. He looked, Elena noticed against her will, like a man whose color had come back, whose posture had settled, who was no longer an hour away from shock. He looked good. He looked like the kind of man you noticed in a lobby, even if you did not know who he was. "Nurse Vance, what are you doing here?" "I had a follow-up." "You don't have a follow-up. You don't have a chart. You walked out AMA." "I have a follow-up in my own mind," he said quite calmly, "which I consider to be the more important chart." Bethany's eyes went very wide. "Bethany," Elena said without looking at her, "can you give us a minute?" Yes." Bethany made herself small and busy at the other end of the counter. Elena walked up to Adrian. She kept her voice low. "You cannot be here. I am not bleeding on your floor. That is not... Mr. Volkov, this is my job. This is my hospital. You do not get to come to the place where I work and ask the charge nurse to page me because you... Because I what? Don't." His gray eyes were on her face, steady, patient. He was not smiling now. He He was watching her the way he had watched her that first night, the way a careful man watches something he has not yet decided about. "I came to tell you," he said quietly, "that your stitches held, that I did not develop an infection, that I had a private physician confirm there was no internal injury. I came to tell you that you were right about the lidocaine, and I was right about the CT, and that I suspect neither of us takes any pleasure in being right. I came to thank you. In person. Because a note is not sufficient. A note was entirely sufficient. I disagree. A rose was entirely more than sufficient." He did not react to this exactly, but something in his face, a small thing, a muscle near the eye, went still in a way she recognized. He had forgotten for half a second that she would know about the rose. And then he had remembered, and then he had decided not to lie about it. "The rose was inappropriate," he said. "I regretted it shortly after." "Good. It will not happen again." "Good." There was a pause. Bethany was pretending very hard to be filing something. Somewhere down the hall, a call bell was going off. Elena was aware, distantly, that she was standing in a hospital corridor in her scrubs, holding a conversation with one of the most dangerous men in the city, and that everyone who walked past them was going to remember it. "Mr. Volkov." "Yes." "I need you to leave." "I understand." "I need you to not come back." He did not answer that one. He held her gaze for a long second, and then, without looking away from her, he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and he took out a small folded piece of paper, and he set it down on the counter between them. "This is a number," he said. "It is mine. Not a deputy, not an assistant. Mine. If you are ever in a situation in which you require help that the city of Brightmoor cannot or will not provide you, you will call it. You will not identify yourself. You will say only Nurse Vance, and you will say where you are, and someone will come. You do not have to use it. You do not have to keep it. I only wanted you to know that it exists. I don't want it. I know. Take it back." "No." She stared at him. "Mr. Volkov, I am asking you politely." "Nurse Vance, I am refusing politely. This is the last thing I will ask of you. After this, I will not return. I will not write. I will not have flowers left at your door. I will not have my men come to your hospital. You have my word." "Your word?" "Yes." "The word of a man like you is worth," he said, and for the first time that afternoon something in his voice had changed, had gotten tired in a way that surprised her. "What it is worth, Nurse Vance, I am aware of the limitations of it. I offer it anyway." She looked at the folded paper on the counter. She did not pick it up. She did not tell him to take it. She did not push it back toward him. She left it there, and she stepped back from the counter, and she said, "Goodbye, Mr. Volkov." "Goodbye, Nurse Vance." He turned. He walked to the elevators. He did not look back. The doors opened, he stepped in, the doors closed, and he was gone. Bethany exhaled so loudly that it echoed off the walls. "Elena! Elena, what?" Elena picked up the paper. She did not unfold it. She walked back down the stairs to the ED, and she put it in the pocket of her scrub top, next to the place where the first note had sat for a while in its time, and she went back to work. She did not throw it away that night. She did not throw it away the next night either. By the end of the week, it was in the bottom drawer of her dresser at home, under a stack of old tax returns, in a place she did not have to look at but did not have to pretend did not exist. She told herself that was the compromise. She would not call it. She would not destroy it. It would simply be there, a small folded thing in the dark, the way unexploded shells were sometimes there in fields 100 years after a war. And if she was careful, she would never have to handle it again. She was not going to be careful. The thing about a promise from a man like Adrian Volkov was that he kept it exactly. No roses came. No notes came. No men came to the ED asking for her by name. On the night she walked home after her shift, the step outside her door was empty. The streets were ordinary. The city was the city. She checked every morning for 2 weeks, and every morning there was nothing. And by the end of the second week, she stopped checking, because the checking itself had started to feel like a small form of hoping, and she did not want to be a woman who hoped for that. He kept his promise. What he did not promise, what she had not, she realized later, thought to extract from him, was that his world would not find her by another route. It was a Tuesday, the second Tuesday of December, 9 days before Christmas. Her mother had called her that morning to ask, for the fourth year in a row, whether she was coming home for the holidays. And for the fourth year in a row, Elena had said no. And for the fourth year in a row, her mother had cried a little and then pretended she had not. And they had gotten off the phone with the polite coolness of two women who loved each other and had never quite forgiven each other for Matteo. She was walking to work in a light snow. It was not real snow. It was the kind of snow that came down in small dry flakes and did not stick to anything, and it made the city look like someone had shaken a bad snow globe. She was crossing Halston Avenue at the corner with the liquor store that had been boarded up since the summer, and she was thinking about the call with her mother, and she was not paying attention. The car came fast. Later, going over it in her head, she would not remember hearing the engine. She would not remember seeing the headlights. What she would remember was a man's hand, sudden and hard on her arm, yanking her back off the crosswalk so fast that she stumbled and dropped her coffee and spun half around with her fist already coming up. And the car, a dark SUV with its windows tinted black, tearing through the space where she had just been standing, going 50 miles an hour through a red light, close enough that the wind of it lifted her hair. It did not stop. It did not slow down. It went through the intersection, fishtailed briefly on the wet pavement, and kept going. And she watched it vanish up Halston with her heart in her throat and her arm hurting from the grip of whoever had... She turned. There was nobody behind her. There was no one on the sidewalk at all. The nearest person was a woman across the street, walking a dog, who had not seen anything, who had not looked up. Elena stood in the middle of the crosswalk with snow in her eyelashes and her coffee cup rolling into the gutter and her arm hurting because someone had grabbed her. She had felt the hand, she had felt the pull, and there was nobody there. "Ma'am, are you okay?" The woman with the dog was calling from across the street. "Are you okay, honey? That car almost hit you." Elena couldn't speak for a second. "I'm fine." "It went right through the light." "I'm fine, I'm okay. Thank you." She walked the rest of the way to the hospital in a kind of fog. She did not tell anyone at work what had happened. She washed her face in the locker room. She pulled up the sleeve of her scrub top in the bathroom under the buzzing light, and she looked at her arm. Above the elbow, on the inside, there were 4 small round bruises beginning to form. 1 large, 3 smaller, the exact pattern of a man's hand. She lowered the sleeve. She stared at herself in the mirror for a long time. She was tired. She was tired in a way she had not been tired since the week after Matteo died. A tired that was not in her body but under it, in the part of her where sleep did not reach. She leaned her forehead against the cool metal of the paper towel dispenser, and she closed her eyes, and she did not pray, because she had stopped praying at 21 for reasons that had felt sufficient at the time and still did. She only stood there, breathing, and she thought, somebody grabbed me. Somebody grabbed me and pulled me back and let go, and walked away before I could turn around. Somebody was there. She did not want to know who. She told herself she did not want to know who. She worked her shift. 2 MVCs, a cardiac, a psych hold, who would not stop screaming the name of a woman who, as far as anyone could tell, did not exist. At 3 a.m, she took her break in the small staff courtyard behind the ED, where the smokers went, and she sat on a frozen bench in her scrub jacket with her hands in her armpits, and she watched her breath come out in small white clouds. She thought about the folded paper in the bottom drawer of her dresser. She thought about it the way you think about a loaded gun in a drawer in a house where a child lives. Not obsessively, not even consciously, just a low, steady awareness that it was there, that the space of the house had a weight in it that it did not used to have, that the room containing the drawer was a different room than other rooms. She did not call the number that night. She went back to work. She finished her shift. She walked home in the weak yellow dawn, and she paid particular attention, crossing Halston, to every parked car on the street. None of them moved. None of them had tinted windows. An old man was shoveling the sidewalk in front of his bodega. A woman was pushing a stroller with a baby who was crying steadily and without hope. The city was ordinary. The city was always ordinary, in the places where ordinary people lived. She did not call the number. Not that day. Not the next day. It was 3 nights later when she came home at dawn and there was a man standing across the street from her building, just standing, not moving, hands in his coat pockets, watching her door. that she stopped on the sidewalk and stood very still and understood that whatever she had been pretending about her life was now over. She walked past her own building. She did not look at the man. She went 2 blocks east into the 24-hour diner on the corner of 8th and Mercer, and she sat in a booth in the back and she ordered a coffee from a tired waitress named Lorraine, whose name tag had a little Christmas wreath drawn on it in Sharpie. She took out her phone. She took it out of the waterproof case she had bought it in, because she had read once somewhere that the case could be listened through, and she did not know if that was true. But she no longer had the energy to assume nothing was true. She took the folded paper out of her wallet, where she had been carrying it for 3 days since the car on Halston. She unfolded it. It was a single phone number. No name, no city code visible. 10 digits written in the same narrow, right slanting blue ink she had seen on the hotel stationery. She typed it in. She sat with her thumb over the call button for a long time. Lorraine brought her coffee. Elena thanked her. She waited until Lorraine had gone back behind the counter, and she waited until the only other customer in the diner, an old man in a sanitation department jacket, half asleep over his eggs, had not looked up at her for a full minute. Then she pressed the button. It rang twice. The voice that answered was his. No hello. No what? Just a small silence that was somehow his silence, and then, "Nurse Vance." She almost hung up. "How did you know?" "No one else has this number." She closed her eyes. "There's a man outside my building." "Where are you?" "A diner, 8th and Mercer. Stay there. Do not leave. Do not walk back to your apartment. Do not take a cab. Someone will come for you in 14 minutes. He will say I am here about the coffee. You will go with him. Do you understand me, Nurse Vance? Do you understand me?" "Yes." 14 minutes. Stay inside. Eat something." He hung up. She set the phone down on the table, face down. Her coffee was still steaming. Her hands were not shaking, which surprised her because she had expected them to be. She looked out the window of the diner, at the snow starting to come down again over the dark street, at the slow, steady headlights of the occasional car passing, at the reflection of her own tired face in the glass. A woman in her 30s, a woman who had said she would never do this, a woman who was doing it anyway. She took a slow breath. 1, 2, 3. She picked up her coffee, and she drank it, and she waited. The man who came for her arrived in 12 minutes, not 14. She saw him before he saw her. He pulled up across the street in a plain dark sedan, not the kind of car she had been expecting, which had probably said something about her assumptions, and he sat in it for maybe 40 seconds before he got out. And the 40 seconds were him looking at the diner and looking at the street behind him and looking at the street ahead of him and probably, Elena thought, looking at his phone to confirm that the woman sitting in the booth at the back was the right woman. Then he got out. He was younger than she had expected, maybe 30, with a heavy jaw and a quiet way of walking that did not match his size. He came into the diner. He did not look at Elena. He went to the counter and he ordered a coffee to go, and while he was waiting for it, he spoke very quietly to Lorraine. Something Elena did not hear, but that made Lorraine nod once, and then nod again. And then he took his coffee, and he turned and he came over to Elena's booth, and he sat down across from her as if she had invited him, and he said quietly, "I am here about the coffee." "Okay." "There's a man on the corner. He has not moved in 30 minutes. He is on a phone. You will stand up. You will walk to the front counter. You will pay. You will leave through the kitchen. There is a door. It goes to the alley. My car is in the alley. You will get in the back seat and lie down. You will not sit up until I tell you. Do you understand?" "I don't have my stuff is at my apartment." "Your stuff is not important." "My passport is." He looked at her. It was the first time he had really looked at her, and what surprised her about his face was that it was kind. Not warm, not soft, but kind the way an old cop was kind. The kindness of a man who had seen enough frightened women to know that the way you got them to do the thing you needed them to do was not by being scary at them. "Nurse Vance," he said, "if we need your passport, we will get you a new one. Please, stand up now." She stood up. She paid Lorraine, who would not meet her eye and who waved off the change. She walked toward the back, and she did not look back at the man in the corner outside. And she pushed through the swinging door to the kitchen where the short-order cook glanced up from his flat top and then away. And she pushed through the back door and came out into the cold alley with her breath coming out in a cloud. And the sedan was there with its back door already open, and she got in. And she lay down, and the man got in the front, and they were moving. Stay down. Okay? Your phone. What? Give me your phone, please. You will get it back. She gave him her phone. He took the battery out of it. She hadn't realized her phone still had a removable battery, and suspected now that he had known something about her phone she did not. And he put the phone and the battery into two separate pockets, and he drove. She lay on her side on the back seat with her cheek against the cold leather, and she watched the tops of buildings go by through the window. She did not ask where they were going. She did not think she would have liked the answer. Her arm, where the hand had grabbed her 3 nights ago, was aching again, which she knew was psychological, but it ached anyway. She closed her eyes. She breathed. 1, 2, 3. She must have dozed off at some point, because when she opened her eyes again, the light outside the window was different, higher, grayer, and the car had stopped moving. You can sit up now. She sat up. They were in a parking garage. Concrete walls, yellow fluorescent lighting, a half-empty floor of dark luxury cars that looked like they had been waxed by men whose entire job was to wax cars. The sedan was parked in a reserved spot near an elevator bank. The elevator bank was behind a glass wall. Behind the glass wall on the other side, a man was waiting. Not Adrian. Dmitri. The heavy one with the crooked nose. Come, her driver said. He got out, and she got out, and he led her through a steel door that he unlocked with a card and then with a thumbprint, and into the corridor where Dmitri was waiting. And Dmitri looked at her the way a headmaster looks at a girl who has been sent to his office for the 3rd time, with a mixture of disapproval and grudging amusement. Nurse Vance. Hi. You are punctual. Your friend drives fast. He is my nephew. He drives like his mother, which is badly, but confidently. Dmitri's mouth did something that was nearly a smile. This way, please. He walked her down the corridor and into the elevator. He pressed the top button. There were only 2 numbers on the panel, P and PH. He pressed PH. The elevator went up without a sound. She did not look at herself in the polished steel of the doors. She did not want to see her own face right now, not here, not with a man whose name she had only learned 30 seconds ago standing at her shoulder. She looked instead at the floor. She counted her breaths. They reached the top. The doors opened, not onto a hallway, but directly into a room. It was a big room. The ceilings went up twice as high as any room she had ever lived in. The far wall was glass, floor to ceiling, and through it she could see a huge slab of gray river under a gray sky, and a bridge she recognized, and a skyline she knew well enough to place herself. For the first time in an hour, inside the city she had been pretending she had left. She was in one of the towers on the north side of the financial district. She was looking at Brightmoor from a height no one in her life had ever looked at it from. The room was almost empty. A long, low couch, gray. A dark wood coffee table. A bookshelf, half full, books that looked like they had actually been read. No television, no art. A kitchen off to the left, open, marble counters clean. A single pair of reading glasses folded on the counter next to a half-finished cup of coffee. He was standing at the window. He was wearing a dark sweater and dark trousers and no shoes, only socks, which for some reason was the detail that undid her the most. He was in his socks, as if this were a house he lived in, as if he were a person who lived here and drank coffee here and sometimes stood at this window and thought about his day. She had built him in her head all week as a figure, a shape, a problem. The socks made him a man. He turned. Nurse Vance. Mr. Volkov. Please sit. I'd rather stand. As you wish. He did not move from the window. Dmitri did not follow her into the room. She heard the elevator doors close behind her, and then she was alone with him, and the only sound was the faint, steady hum of the building itself, and somewhere distantly, the sound of wind against glass. I need to know, she said. What's happening? Yes. I need you to say it straight. No being clever. No, whatever this is. Just tell me. He considered her for a moment. Then he walked across the room, slowly, in his socks, and he sat down on the far end of the long gray couch. He gestured, one hand open, at the other end. She stayed standing. 3 weeks ago, he said, a man named Kostas Marinos was killed in a parking lot behind a restaurant in the Harbor District, shot 4 times. 2 of those shots were in the back of his head. The other 2 were... let us say, decorative. His voice was very even. Mr. Marinos was a man who had recently been doing business with the people who attacked me the night I came to your hospital. He had been trying to negotiate a peace on my behalf. He was not successful. The people who killed him are the same people who put a knife in me. They are, how do I say it in English? They are an organization that is not from this country, but has been attempting to move into this city for 3 years. I have been attempting to stop them. The knife was part of that. Mr. Marinos' death was part of that, and the car on Halston Avenue 4 nights ago, and the man outside your building this morning are also part of that. She had known. On some level, underneath her, she had known, since the crosswalk. But hearing him say it out loud in his calm, even voice was a different thing from knowing it, and her stomach did a slow, sick turn. Why me? Because I came to your hospital. Because I let them see from a distance, through their people inside that hospital, that a certain nurse had handled me. Because I was, that night, not in full control of myself, and I did not think carefully enough about who would know by morning. And because these people, his jaw tightened slightly. These people do not punish men like me by killing men like me. That is not their method. Their method is to find a person near us who is not us, who is not armed, who is not prepared, and to use that person as a message. They are very good at messages, so I'm a message. They wanted you to be one, yes. Were they going to kill me? They were going to hurt you, he said. I do not believe they intended to kill you, no. What they did on Halston was a warning. They wanted you to understand that they knew where you lived. They wanted me, by extension, to understand the same thing. The man this morning was a second warning. The third warning, if it had come, would have been physical. She closed her eyes. She had been standing, and she did not know when she opened them how her body had made the decision, but she was sitting now on the far end of the couch from him, with her hands flat on her knees. And the hand, she said. What hand? On Halston, someone pulled me back, off the street, before the car came. He did not answer at once. When he did, he was not looking at her. He was looking at his own hands, loosely folded in his lap, and there was an expression on his face that she did not yet know how to read. Yes. It was one of yours. Yes. You've had people following me since the afternoon I came to see you at your hospital. Yes. I did not tell you because I knew you would not permit it. I decided that I would rather you be angry with me later than dead now. You are entitled to be angry with me about this. I will not apologize for it. Elena let out a small laugh. It came out of her surprised and not quite like her own voice. You, she said, you're unbelievable. I have been told. No, really. You have people following me, and you don't even have the courtesy. Courtesy is a concept I have limited use for when it conflicts with keeping someone alive. That isn't your call to make, Mr. Volkov. It was my call to make, Nurse Vance, because you would not have made it. You would have said no. You would have said, leave me alone. You would have said you were fine. And you would have been dead in the gutter on Halston Avenue 4 nights ago, and I would have been... He stopped. He closed his mouth. He looked at her. I would have been responsible, he said, more quietly, for the rest of my life. I am responsible for many things. I will not be responsible for that. I am sorry if this offends you. She looked at him. For the first time, she looked at him with something other than the careful professional detachment she had been putting between them since the first night. She looked at his face. He had not slept well, she saw. His eyes had the particular set of a man who had been awake for a long time. The skin under his jaw had thinned the way it did on men who had started drinking more than they used to. There was a small tension at the corner of his mouth that she would have, on any other patient, written down on a chart as pain. She thought, he has been frightened. She thought, he has been frightened for me, and he has not told anyone, because there is no one in his life for him to tell. The thought came to her with a kind of low, quiet clarity that she did not at all welcome. She looked away from him. She looked out the window at the river. A long, flat barge was going up it toward the harbor, moving very slowly, a single small figure standing in the wheelhouse. What happens now? She said. Now. He took a breath. Now you stay here, for a short time, a few days, a week, until I have handled the men who have been following you. During that time, you will not contact the hospital. I have had someone call them. You are—" His mouth did the almost smile thing again, and she realized watching it that he did it when he was uncomfortable. "You are experiencing a family emergency. Your grandmother in Mexico is ill. You have had to travel. You will not be available for 2 weeks. My grandmother is dead." "Yes, I know. So do my people. They have been very thorough. The story is that you have an elderly relative in Oaxaca who is the last of your grandmother's siblings, and that she has had a stroke, and that you are the family member who has gone to look after her. Your mother is named as aware of the situation. Your brother Javier has been told a version that is consistent with this. No one will look too closely, because no one at your hospital is paid enough to look too closely at a nurse's sudden family leave. You will return in 2 weeks. By then it will be over." She stared at him. "You called my mother." "I did not call your mother. Someone called your mother who said she was from the hospital, who told your mother that her daughter had asked that she not be contacted because of the family difficulty, who apologized for any worry this caused. Your mother was not alarmed. Your mother said—" He glanced at her, and there was a small, careful thing in his face. "Your mother said she was not surprised. She said, 'That is Elena. She goes. She does not tell me when she goes.' I am relaying this as I was told it. I do not know what it means." Elena laughed again. This time she did not recognize the sound at all. It came out of her like something breaking, and she put her hand over her mouth, and she sat there on the couch in a penthouse she had never asked to be in, belonging to a man she had met 2 weeks ago, while he repeated to her, almost verbatim, a sentence that her mother had been saying about her since she was 14 years old. "Mr. Volkov." "Yes." "You have made an enormous number of decisions about my life today." "Yes." "Without asking me?" "Yes." "I want to be clear that I'm furious with you." "I understand." "I want to be clear that I may continue to be furious with you for a long time." "That is—" His mouth did the thing again. "You're right, Nurse Vance." She put her hands over her face. She sat there for a second, breathing into her palms. Her face was hot. Her eyes were not wet, because she did not cry anymore, but she could feel the shape of where she would have if she were a different woman. When she took her hands down, her voice was level again. "Where am I sleeping?" "There is a guest suite through that door. It has its own bath. It has clothes. It has books. It has I was told, a decent view. If there is anything you need that is not there, you will tell Mrs. Oksanen, who is the woman who keeps this apartment, and she will get it for you. You will see her in the morning. She does not speak much English, but she speaks enough. I'm not eating dinner with you. I had not invited you to." "Good. Good." There was a long pause. She was still not looking at him. She was looking at the view, at the barge, at the small moving figure in the wheelhouse. "Mr. Volkov." "Yes. If you ever follow me again after this is over, if you ever put a man behind me again, I swear to God." She stopped because she had broken her own private rule about that word, and the breaking of it gave her a strange small thump in the chest. "If you ever do that to me again, I will walk into a federal building and I will tell them every single thing I have seen here tonight. I do not care what it costs me. I do not care what it costs you. Do you understand me?" He looked at her. He looked at her for what felt like a very long time, and then without any of the small, almost smile, he nodded once. Slowly. A small, clean gesture of a man conceding a point. "I understand, Nurse Vance." "Say it back to me. If this is over, I will not have you followed again. You have my word." "The word of a man like you is worth—" "What it is worth, yes. We have had this conversation." His eyes stayed on hers. "I offer it anyway." She nodded. She got up from the couch. She did not trust her legs to hold her if she sat any longer. She walked to the door he had gestured at, and she put her hand on the handle, and she turned back because there was one more thing, and she was going to say it now while she still had the voice for it. "The people following me." "Yes." "You're going to kill them." He did not answer immediately. "Mr. Volkov, you are going to kill them." "If I answer that question, Nurse Vance," he said quietly, "I put you in a position you will not want to be in. If you are ever asked by anyone what I said to you tonight, You will not want the answer to include what I might have said about that. I have spent some time thinking in the last hour about what you should and should not carry out of this room with you. That is one of the things I think you should not carry. I'm asking. I know. Are you going to kill them? Yes. She looked at him. She did not say anything. She opened the door and she walked through it, and she closed it behind her, and she stood on the other side of it with her back pressed to the wood, and she breathed. 1, 2, 3, then 5, then 10. The room was more beautiful than any bedroom she had ever stood in. The bed was enormous. There were fresh flowers on a small table by the window. Not roses, she noticed, which she thought dimly was either considerate or calculating, and did not at the moment have the strength to decide between. The window looked out on the same river, from a slightly different angle. She walked across the room and she sat down on the edge of the bed, and she stayed there, in her coat, for a long time, until her legs stopped shaking. Then she lay down, without taking off her coat, on top of the covers. She put her arm across her eyes, and she slept, hard, the way she had not slept in weeks. She woke up at 2 in the afternoon. The sun, such as it was, had come through the clouds at some point during her sleep, and it was slanting through the window in a thin, pale band that fell across her legs. She did not know for a second where she was. Then she knew. She sat up slowly in yesterday's scrubs, which she had slept in, and she pressed her hands to her face, and she swung her legs over the edge of the bed. She showered. The bathroom was cold marble and very expensive. There were clothes in the closet that were her size, which was a detail she chose not to examine. She put on a pair of soft gray sweatpants and a white t-shirt and thick socks, because she was not going to be the kind of woman who dressed up in a dead man's house. She went out into the main room. He was not there. Mrs. Oxenen was. Mrs. Oxenen was in her 60s, broad and square and gray-haired, and she was in the kitchen doing something with vegetables. And when Elena came out of the hallway, Mrs. Oxenen looked up and said, in heavily accented English, "You eat? Now sit." Elena sat. Mrs. Oxenen put a bowl of soup in front of her. It was a red soup, heavy, with cabbage and potato and small chunks of what Elena thought was beef. It was the best thing Elena had eaten in a year. She did not say so because Mrs. Oxenen did not look like a woman who required compliments. She ate. Mrs. Oxenen watched her eat the way grandmothers watched, which was to say, with the detached satisfaction of a woman confirming a theory. "Is he here?" Elena said finally. "Not here." "Where?" Mrs. Oxenen gave her a long, flat look that communicated, without words, that this was not a question she was going to answer and not a question Elena was going to be asking again. Elena looked down at her soup. "Sorry." "Eat." She ate. She spent the afternoon in the guest suite reading a book she pulled off the shelf, a Russian novel in English translation, which struck her as a little on the nose, and which she put back and replaced with a worn paperback mystery that had somebody's old airline boarding pass stuck in it as a bookmark. She did not call her mother. She did not try to call the hospital. She sat in a chair by the window and she read, and when she could not read, she looked at the river, and she watched the light change on it, and she thought about her mother's sentence. "That is Elena, she goes. She does not tell me when she goes," which she had not known her mother had ever said about her to anyone. She thought, "My mother has been describing me to people for 10 years as someone who leaves. 10 years. And I never knew." She thought, "I have been a worse daughter than I thought." She thought, "When I get out of here, I'm going to Phoenix for Christmas." It was around 6 in the evening when she heard the elevator. She stayed where she was. She did not go out. She heard voices, his, Dimitri's, a third she did not recognize, speaking a language she did not know. The voices were low and quick. There was a long pause. Then his, alone, speaking on a phone. Then silence. Then the sound, distinct, of a glass being set hard on the marble counter. She got up. She went to the door. She did not open it, but she stood with her hand on the handle, listening. She heard him walk. She heard him stop at the window. She could tell, because the footsteps stopped at the far side of the room. She heard him breathe, long and slow, like a man who was trying to make himself do it on purpose. She heard a single small sound she did not immediately identify. Then she did. It was the small wet sound a person makes when they are trying not to make any sound at all. She stood there with her hand on the handle and her forehead against the wood of the door, and she listened, and the man on the other side of the door was crying, quietly, standing at the window of his own apartment, thinking himself alone. 3 seconds. 5, 10, 15. He did not make another sound after the first one. He did not let himself. But he was crying. She could hear it in the way his breathing was going now, in short, small breaks. The pattern of a man who had put his hand over his own mouth. She did not open the door. She did not know what had happened in the city between the morning and the evening. She did not know how many men were alive at 6 p.m. who had been alive at noon. She did not know what he had done, or what had been done to him, or what had been reported to him on the phone call she had just heard the end of. She did not know either what he had been before he had been this, whether there had ever been a version of him who had not been bracing against the day. She only knew that he was on the other side of a door in his own house, and that he thought he was alone, and that he was crying, and that the man who had walked into her ED 2 weeks ago with blood on his shirt and a gun under his coat was also this man, and this man was also that one, and she did not know what to do with the information. She took her hand off the handle. She stepped back from the door. She walked across the guest room very quietly, and she sat down on the edge of the bed, and she waited. In a little while, the sound of his footsteps resumed. He walked, slowly, evenly, like a man who had collected himself, into what must have been his own bedroom. A door closed. A shower turned on, somewhere at the far end of the apartment, and ran for a long time. She sat on the edge of her bed in the quiet. She thought about the laceration under his ribs. She thought about the 37 stitches. She thought about the small, steady way he had looked at her across the counter at 4 North, and the word please, and the old-fashioned way he had written, "Thank you, nurse." She thought about the hand on her arm at Halston Avenue, and she thought, with a kind of cold, clear honesty that she did not like in herself, "I am in trouble. I am in a different kind of trouble than I was in this morning. I am in a kind of trouble I cannot blame him for." Somewhere in the apartment, the shower turned off. She lay down on the bed, on her side, facing the window. She pulled the blanket over herself. She did not sleep for a long time. But when she did, finally, sometime after midnight, she slept deeply. And she did not dream. And when she woke up, the gray morning light was coming in over the river. And she lay there for a while without moving, listening to the building be quiet around her. And she knew, without knowing how she knew, that something in her life had shifted in the dark, and that she was not going to be able to walk it back. The morning after she heard him crying, she did not mention it. She came out of the guest suite in the clothes she had chosen to be least like clothes. The sweatpants, the t-shirt, the socks, and she sat at the kitchen counter while Mrs. Oksanen made her eggs, and she ate them without tasting them, and she drank coffee that was better than any coffee she had ever paid for. And she did not look up when Adrian came out of the hallway in a dark suit, with his hair still wet from the shower and his face clean-shaven, and the particular set to his mouth of a man who had decided in front of a mirror to be a certain kind of man for the rest of the day. "Good morning," he said. "Morning." That was the extent of it. He took a cup of coffee that Mrs. Oksanen handed him without being asked. He stood at the counter and drank it in 4 swallows. He put the cup down. He said something to Mrs. Oksanen in the language they shared. Russian, Elena had decided, though she was not really sure. And Mrs. Oksanen nodded once without looking up from the pan. He left. The elevator closed behind him. Elena let out a breath she had not known she was holding. "He does not eat," Mrs. Oksanen said. It was the longest sentence the woman had spoken in front of her yet. She said it without emphasis, the way you would say it is raining. "Not in morning, I tell him. He does not listen." "How long has he been like that?" Mrs. Oksanen looked up. She had pale blue eyes, very pale, almost gray at the edges. She looked at Elena for a long moment, weighing something. "Long time." "Since when?" "Not my story." She flicked her wrist, dismissive. "You eat, then you stay. No phone, no window." Her eyes flicked past Elena toward the glass wall that went down to the river. "No standing at window." Elena stopped eating. "Why?" "Because men have—" Mrs. Oksanen searched for the word, her lips pursing. "Binoculars, cameras, long guns. You eat, away from glass." Elena moved her plate. That was how her first full day in the penthouse went. She did not stand at the window. She sat on the couch, in the part of the couch that was not in any sight line from the river. She read the paperback mystery. She finished it at 2 in the afternoon. She started another one, a Western of all things, something with a horse on the cover and a title in serif lettering that was so worn she could not read it anymore. It turned out to be about a woman in Montana in 1889 who had shot her husband with his own rifle and then had to walk 18 miles to a town through a snowstorm. Elena read it in 4 hours. She did not know whose book it was. She did not know whose taste this bookshelf was. She did not know whether it was his or whether one of his lieutenants had bought the books in bulk at an estate sale, or whether the shelves had come with the apartment. She thought about asking. She did not ask. He did not come back that night. He did not come back the next night either. Mrs. Oksanen came and went in the morning and the evening. There was always food. There were always small domestic sounds from the kitchen. A dishwasher being loaded, the hum of the refrigerator, the clock on the oven quietly marking the hours. There were men, 2 of them, who sat in a small room off the main hallway with a bank of monitors and did not come out except to use the bathroom, and who nodded at her when she walked past and did not attempt anything more. She could not have named them. They could not, she was certain, have named her either, though she was equally certain they had memorized her face. On the 3rd day, she asked Mrs. Oksanen, "Is he alive?" Mrs. Oksanen did not look up from the vegetables she was cutting. "Yes." "Okay." "You are worried." No. I wanted to know." "You are worried." Mrs. Oksanen set the knife down. She wiped her hands on the apron she wore, which had small blue flowers on it and a stain on the hip that was older than the flowers. She looked at Elena across the counter. "Nurse Vance?" "Yes." "Long time ago, I worked for his mother, in the house where he was boy. I have known him since he was so." She held her hand at the height of a small child. "His mother was good woman. His father was not good. Not worst I have seen, but not good. He made boy sit in cellar sometimes, many hours, dark, alone, for small things, spilled glass, wrong word at table." Elena put her coffee down. "I tell you this," Mrs. Oksanen said, "because you are worried, because you have question in your face about him. I am not telling you to make excuse for him. He is grown man. He chose his life. Choices are his. But you ask why he does not eat breakfast, why he does not sleep, why he does the things you have heard him do when he thinks no one here. You do not know yet that man can carry his childhood inside him, like stone in pocket, for 50 years, until stone is heavier than him. You do not know yet because you are young. You will learn." "I'm not that young." "You are young to me." Mrs. Oksanen picked the knife back up. "Eat. Go sit down. I will tell you when he is home." On the 4th night, he came home. It was late, after 11, and Elena was not asleep. She had stopped being able to sleep at normal hours. She was sitting up in the guest room with the lamp on and the Western open in her lap, and she heard the elevator, and she heard his footsteps, and she heard him stop in the main room and stand still for a long moment without moving, and then she heard something she had not heard from him before, a small quick sound like a breath caught wrong, and the heavy sound of a body sitting down hard. She got up, she opened the door. He was sitting on the couch in the dark. The only light in the room was coming from the city outside the window, which was not much. He had not turned on a lamp. He had his elbows on his knees and his head in his hands. He was fully dressed. He had not even taken off his coat. There was blood on his cuff, not a lot. The amount of blood a person got on themselves when they had been near blood without being the source of it. He looked up when she came out. He straightened immediately. He pulled his hands away from his face, and his face did the thing faces did when a person had been caught at something and was now pretending they had not been, and he almost stood up. She saw his legs shift, and then he did not. "Nurse Vance." "It's 1 in the morning. I did not mean to wake you." "You didn't." He nodded once. He looked down at his own hands. He turned them over, palm up, and he looked at them for a moment as if he were checking something, and then he put them back on his knees. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Is that true?" "Yes." "Show me." He looked up at her. "Mr. Volkov, show me." He held out his hands. She walked across the room. barefoot, in her t-shirt and sweatpants. Her hair loose down her back because she had stopped putting it up for bed days ago. And she took his wrist, lightly, with 2 fingers, and she turned it under the light coming in from the window. The cuff of his shirt was stiff with someone else's blood. His own skin was clean. The back of his hand had a small red mark across the knuckles, old enough to have started to scab. That was all. She let go of his wrist. She did not go back to the guest room. She sat down on the coffee table, facing him, close enough that their knees almost touched. He was watching her the way he had watched her across the exam table on the first night, the rifle barrel way. But there was something different inside it now, something more tired. Talk to me. About anything, Mr. Volkov. You came in here and sat down in the dark with your coat on. Talk to me. He did not answer for a long moment. Then he said, a man named Pyotr Osin was killed tonight. Not by me, by people who work for me. Mr. Osin was 34. He had a wife. He had a son who is 6. He had been one of the men who followed you on Halston. He was the one who sat in the car. I spoke to him. I asked him some questions. He answered most of them. Then he was killed. His body will be found in a place in which it will look as if he died at the hands of his own organization, for his own reasons, which will cause them some difficulty internally, which is the purpose. I did not pull the trigger, but I was in the room. I watched. I nodded when it was time. I have done this before. I do not do it often. Each time I do it, it is a small amount harder than the time before. I do not know if that is because I'm getting older or because I'm getting worse at it, or because the men are getting younger. Tonight, Mr. Osin was younger than I expected. I had thought he was my age. He was 34. He looked 34. I was thinking, for most of the car ride back, about his son. Elena did not speak. He let out a long breath. I do not tell people these things, he said quietly. I do not tell anyone. I am telling you because you asked. You are the first person in... He stopped. You are the first person in a long time to ask me a question and wait for the answer. I am out of practice at this. I apologize if it is too much. It's not too much. You are a nurse. You are used to hearing unpleasant things. That is not why I'm not finding it too much, Mr. Volkov. He looked at her. He held the look for a long second, and then he looked away, down at his hands again, and a muscle along his jaw worked. Adrian, he said. What? My name. It is Adrian. You may use it if you want. She did not answer. He cleared his throat. He moved as if to stand. I should not have sat down out here in the dark. It was... I will go. I will... Sit down, Adrian. He sat. They sat in the dark together for a long time without speaking. The city hummed outside the glass. Somewhere below, a siren went by. His breathing, which had been tight and shallow when he came in, slowly went deeper. She did not touch him. She did not need to. After a while, he said, I'm sorry. For what? For bringing you into this. For all of it. I'm going to tell you something, Elena said. And then we're going to not talk anymore tonight, because you're tired and I'm tired, and neither of us is going to say anything useful if we keep going, okay? Okay. When I was 21, my brother Matteo got picked up outside a club in Riverside. He was picked up because a man he had been running errands for owed money to a man he had not been running errands for, and because the second man could not get to the first man, he got to my brother. They found Matteo in the trunk of a car at 6 in the morning. He had been dead for maybe 2 hours. My mother made a sound that morning I have never been able to forget. I was in the room when the detective called. I was the one who picked up the phone. I have spent every day since that morning being angry at men who run cities the way your people run them, Adrian. Every day. And when I walked into that trauma bay the night you came in, I did not know your name, but I knew your shape. I knew what kind of man you were. And I was not brave when I spoke to you the way I did. I was spitting at Matteo's funeral is what I was doing. For 10 years. She stopped. She looked at him. I don't know what you think is happening between us. I don't know what you think I think is happening, but I want to be clear about one thing because I am too tired to not be clear. I did not forgive you tonight. You are not becoming a person I am forgiving. I don't know what this is, but it is not that. He nodded. I understand. Do you? Yes. He was looking at her steadily, not flinching. I do not ask for forgiveness, Nurse Vance. I have not earned it. I will not earn it. I am asking only that for the days you are under my roof, you speak to me sometimes. That is all. That is more than I have any right to ask. I understand that also. She sat with that. She sat with it for a long time. Then she said very quietly, Okay. Okay? Okay. She got up. She went back to the guest room. She closed the door softly behind her. She lay down in the dark, and she stared at the ceiling for an hour. And when she finally slept, she slept without dreams. On the sixth day, she came out of the guest suite at 10 in the morning, and he was sitting at the kitchen counter in a black t-shirt and sweatpants, drinking coffee, reading a newspaper. An actual paper newspaper. His hair was uncombed. There was stubble along his jaw. He looked, for once, like a man who had not decided in front of a mirror what kind of man to be today. Good morning. Morning. She sat down 2 stools over from him. Mrs. Oksanen, without being asked, put a plate of eggs and toast in front of her. The eggs had small pieces of herb in them that Elena did not recognize, but that tasted very good. She ate. You are reading Louis L'Amour, he said, without looking up from the paper. You saw that. I saw it on the coffee table last night. Whose book is it? Mine. You read westerns. I read... He turned a page. Anything I find. I grew up without books in my house. I made up for it later, not in any organized way. I have read Tolstoy, and I have read, what is it, Lee Child. I could not tell you why I own what I own. I am not a collector. I am a man who reads one book and then looks for another book and does not always pay attention to where the second book comes from. My brother Javier reads like that. The one in Phoenix. Yes. Is he a good brother? She considered it. He's a better brother than I've been a sister. I doubt that. You haven't met me as a sister. He looked up at her finally, a small, tired thing at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. You do not give yourself enough credit, Nurse Vance. Elena. He went still. What? My name. It's Elena. You may use it, if you want. There was a long pause. Elena. Adrian. He looked down at his coffee cup. He turned it slowly with both hands, as if he had never seen a coffee cup before. That is the first time he said, and then he stopped. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. They finished breakfast in silence. It was not an awkward silence. It was only a silence, the kind of silence 2 people could sit inside without it meaning anything more than that neither of them needed, at that moment, to fill it. When he got up to leave, he paused behind her chair. I will be home tonight, he said. I will try to be home before 10. If you would like to eat with me, Mrs. Oksanen will make something. If you would not, she will bring a tray to your room. It is your choice, entirely. I'll eat with you. Thank you. He left. That night he came home at 8:40. He had not brought blood on his cuffs. He had brought instead a small bag from a place on the other side of the city that Elena recognized, a bakery that her mother had loved and had talked about for years. A place that did a particular kind of Mexican sweetbread that you could not get anywhere else in Brightmoor. She stared at the bag. How did you... I asked Mrs. Oksanen what your mother liked when she was a girl. How did she know? She called your mother. What? She called your mother. She said she was a nurse at the hospital and she was preparing some care packages for the staff during the family emergency period. And she asked if there were any comfort foods from your childhood that we might be able to include. Your mother spoke to her for 40 minutes. Elena stared at him. She started laughing. It was the first time she had laughed in 2 weeks. It came up out of her in small, helpless hiccups, and she put her face in her hands, and she laughed into her palms until her shoulders shook. My mother talked to Mrs. Oksanen for 40 minutes. She did. She never talks to anyone for 40 minutes. Mrs. Oksanen is very good at listening. I believe it is the main skill required for her job. She has worked for my family for 30 years. She has heard a great deal. She does not repeat it. His mouth did the almost smile softer tonight. Your mother told her many things. Mrs. Oksanen relayed to me only the food. I thought you might enjoy it. Elena wiped her eyes. Adrian? Yes. This is an insane thing to have done. I know. Thank you. They ate in the living room. Mrs. Oksanen had made some kind of chicken stew, and they tore the sweet bread with their hands, and Elena told him about Oaxaca, even though she had only been there twice as a child. And he told her, in small pieces, about a village near Kaliningrad, where he had been born, and about a river there that had frozen over every winter so hard you could drive a truck across it, and about how once when he was 9, his father had driven a truck across it. Drunk at night and the ice had held, and his father had afterwards said, "You see, the river loves me," and how Adrian had decided at the age of 9, hearing it, that his father was wrong, and that the river did not love anyone. "I was correct," he said. "About your father?" "About the river." He shook his head once. "About my father also. But I was too young to know the father thing. The river thing was what I knew first." She looked at him. She looked at him for a long time, and he looked back at her, and neither of them said anything. Then the window behind them exploded inward. It happened very fast, and it happened very slowly, both. She would remember later the sound of it first. The glass, going all at once. Not a crack, but a collapse. Like somebody had dropped a crate of bottles off a roof and the air itself had broken. Then she would remember the heat across her back, which was the rush of cold night coming in through the broken wall, and the small hot sting on her cheek where a piece of glass had cut her, and the sound of Adrian shouting something in a language she did not understand, and his hand, enormous and hard, on the back of her neck, pushing her down, pushing her under the coffee table, the full weight of him coming down over her. She would remember also that it was not a bomb. That was the first thing her brain decided, even while she was down under the table with his arm across her shoulders. It was not a bomb because she was alive, and because the sound had come from outside and not all around her. Bombs came from all around you. This had come from above. Then she heard the second sound, the one that put it together. Not gunfire. Not quite. A sound like somebody beating the apartment with a stick, fast and rhythmic, hitting the walls, hitting the ceiling, hitting the couch where they had been sitting 30 seconds ago. Chunks of drywall came off the wall above the kitchen. A painting she had not even noticed, a dark thing, not a painting she had liked, jumped off its hook and crashed down in 2 pieces. Somewhere near the kitchen, Mrs. Oksanen screamed, a short, hard sound, more anger than fear. "Stay down," Adrian, in her ear. "Do not move, do not look up." The window. It was not a window. It was a drone. "There are 3. 1 is down. 2 more. Stay." She stayed. She had her face pressed to the rug. Some expensive rug that smelled like wool and faintly like him, and her hands were over the back of her head the way they had taught her in middle school for earthquake drills. And she was breathing in short, shallow breaths, and her mind was, ridiculously, calm. Calm the way she was calm in trauma bays. She was noticing things. The cut on her cheek was not deep. Her hearing was fine, which meant the sound had not been loud enough to damage it, which meant whatever was hitting the apartment was small caliber, which meant somebody was trying to kill specific people and not the whole building. She tried to reach for Adrian's wrist to take his pulse, a reflex, and realized that he had his whole body over hers, his chest against her back, his forearm over her head, and that she could feel his heart hammering against her shoulder blade, and that it was hammering too fast, the way a heart hammered when the man attached to it was about to make a decision. "Adrian, 2 more seconds." A voice, one of the men from the monitor room, shouting from down the hall. Adrian shouted back. Then there was another of the beating sounds, closer. The coffee table above them jumped, one of its legs snapped, the whole thing tilted, and Adrian moved. He did something she would not later be able to describe. He got off her, he got up into a crouch, and he pulled her up with one arm around her ribs, half carrying her, and he ran. Not across the room. Along the inside wall, the wall away from the broken glass, low and fast, and she was moving with him without thinking about how, and she was aware, in the part of her brain that would not shut up even in an emergency, that he had done this before, that his body knew how to do this, that he was moving her the way a soldier moved a civilian, efficiently and without tenderness, and with complete attention. She heard another burst of sound behind them, and the refrigerator, across the room, shook as if somebody had kicked it. They were in the hallway. They were through a door. He was pulling her down a short interior corridor she had not known existed, past a utility closet, into a stairwell that smelled of concrete. Down. How far? All the way. Do not stop. Do not look up. If I fall, you keep going. You go to the parking level. There is a car. The man driving is Marco. You get in. You do not wait. Adrian, if I fall, Elena, promise me. I promise. She did not mean it. They went down the stairs. He was in front of her. He had a gun in his hand. She did not know when he had taken it out. She had not seen him take it out. It was simply there now. And his other hand was behind him on her wrist, pulling her along the turn, steady, never too hard. They went down one flight, 2, 3. Somewhere above, she heard the beating sound again, fainter, and then a different sound, a single sharp crack, not like the drone, like a proper gun, and then silence. He stopped on the landing between floors. He put his hand flat against her chest, against her sternum, pressing her gently back against the wall. He held one finger to his lips. He was listening. His head was tilted slightly. His gray eyes were unreadable. She realized her cheek was bleeding. She had not noticed before. A drop ran down her jaw and fell onto the collar of her t-shirt. Did they get in? She whispered. They did not get in. They wanted to. Mrs. Oksanen. She is fine. She is in the panic room. She was in it before the second drone finished its run. She is good at her job, Elena. She has been good at her job for 30 years. The men on the monitors. He hesitated. One of them is hurt. He will be alive. The other is fine. They are the reason the last drone did not get through. We are... He closed his eyes briefly. We are very fortunate. She looked at him. His hand was still on her sternum. She could feel his pulse through his fingers. He was breathing too fast. There was a small cut along his hairline where something, flying glass, a piece of drywall, she could not tell, had opened up the same place he had been cut the first night in the ED, the exact same place, as if the universe had a certain small sense of humor about him. She reached up, without thinking, and she touched the cut with her thumb, and she wiped the blood away from the corner of his eyebrow so it would not get into his eye. He went completely still. You're bleeding, she said. Yes. I told you not to get hit in the same place twice. I did not plan to. You planned for everything. Not for this. They stood there in the cold stairwell, her back against the concrete, her hand on his face. A door clanged somewhere above them. He flinched, a small, involuntary thing, and his hand on her chest pressed a little harder, as if making sure she was still there. We need to keep moving, he said. I know. Elena. Yeah. When this is over, he stopped. He looked at her, and for the first time since the first night she saw him not as Adrian Volkov, but as a man, just a man, a tired one, with a cut over his eye, and somebody else's blood on his sleeve and a gun in one hand and a woman's wrist in the other. And she understood with a small, clean certainty that whatever she had been pretending about what was happening between them was not going to survive this staircase. When this is over, he said, we will talk. Okay. You are allowed to leave. I want to say that now. When this is over, you may leave, and I will not follow you, and I will not have you followed, and you will not see me again if you do not wish to. This is what I promised. I am saying it again, so you know. I know, Adrian. Good. But I'm not leaving right now. Right now we go down the stairs. Right now we go down the stairs. They went down the stairs. 3 more flights. A fire door. A hallway that smelled of exhaust. The parking level. A dark car idling, and a man, not the young one from the diner, an older man she had not seen before, with a completely bald head and the square shoulders of a retired wrestler, who opened the back door without a word. She got in. Adrian got in after her. The doors shut. The car moved. They drove out into a dark city she could not at first place, past streetlights she did not recognize, along a long curve of river she had seen only from above. The heater was on. Her hands had started to shake, finally, now that she did not have to use them. She looked down and saw that his hand was still around her wrist. He had not let go since the stairwell. He did not let go now. He looked at his own hand. He looked at hers. And very slowly, with the careful deliberation of a man who had spent a lifetime not touching anyone, he let his thumb move, once, across the soft skin on the inside of her wrist, where her pulse was. He did not say anything. He did not look at her. She did not pull her wrist away. The car drove. Somewhere behind them, 28 floors up, the wind came in through the broken wall of a penthouse that would, by morning, be on the front page of every paper in Brightmoor. Glass lay on the rug they had eaten dinner on. A piece of Mexican sweetbread, half eaten, lay on the floor near the overturned coffee table. A woman named Mrs. Oksanen sat in a concrete room behind a steel door, with her hands folded in her lap, waiting to be told it was safe to come out, listening to her own breathing, and thinking, not for the first time in her life, that the boy she had known when he was very small had become a man who was loved by somebody, finally, after so long, and that the loving of him was going to cost that somebody a great deal. The car turned onto a bridge. The city slid past. Elena Vance sat in his back seat beside a man whose hand was on her wrist, and she did not move, and she did not speak, and she did not sleep, and her cheek bled slowly onto the collar of the t-shirt she had chosen that morning so that she would not have to be a certain kind of woman in a certain kind of house. And she watched the dark water of the river go by below the bridge, and she thought, with the slow, steady clarity of a woman who had finally stopped lying to herself about what she wanted, that somewhere back up in the apartment they had just run from, a version of her life had ended, and that whatever came next was going to be a life she had chosen, with both eyes open, for the first time in a long time. The car reached the other side of the bridge. It kept going. The car drove for an hour and a half before it stopped. They did not speak on the way. Adrian did not take his hand off her wrist, and she did not take her wrist out of his hand, and the bald man in the front seat, Marco, she had learned, although nobody had introduced him, kept his eyes on the road and drove the way men like him drove, which was fast and almost invisible, through back routes she had never seen in a city she had lived in for 10 years. They crossed a second bridge. They went up along a frontage road that ran beside a marshland. They turned off onto a smaller road, and then onto a smaller one, until the streetlights stopped entirely and the only light was the headlights, and the occasional cold glow of a farmhouse window a long way off through bare winter trees. The house, when they came to it, was not the kind of house she had been expecting. She had been expecting another tower, another fortress of glass and money. What she got instead was an old 2-story clapboard farmhouse set back from the road behind a row of pines, white paint going gray, a wide porch with a single bulb burning above the door. The driveway was gravel. There was a pickup truck parked beside the house that looked like it had been there since before she was born. "What is this place?" she said. "It is a house," Adrian said. "It belongs to a man who used to work for me. He does not work for me anymore. He is a farmer now. I pay him to keep a room for me. I have not used it in 4 years. Why keep it? Because there is nothing about it that connects to me on paper. Because the man who lives here is an honest man who does not ask questions. Because once in a while a person has a bad night, and it is good to have somewhere to go." Marco stopped the car. He got out. He went to the front door of the house, and he knocked. 3, then 2, a small coded pattern. And after a moment, the door opened and an older man came out. He was in his 60s, gray-bearded, wearing a barn coat over flannel pajamas. He nodded at Marco. He looked past Marco to the car. He did not look surprised. Adrian got out. He came around to Elena's side and opened the door. He offered his hand. She took it, and she let him help her out, and she realized, stepping into the gravel, that her legs were not quite working right. Her knees were soft. Her calves were shaking. Her cheek, where the glass had cut it, had stopped bleeding but had stiffened into a line of dried blood from her jaw to her collarbone. The farmer's eyes went to it once, took it in, moved on without comment. "Adrian." "Henrik." "Inside." They went inside. The house was warm. It smelled of wood smoke and of something that had been simmering on a stove for a long time. A chicken broth, maybe, or a bone stock. The rooms were small. The ceilings were low. There was a cat on a kitchen chair that did not move when they came in, but only opened one yellow eye and then closed it again, unimpressed. "You have a first aid kit," Adrian said. Not a question. "Bathroom. Upstairs. Left." "Thank you. There is also stew. You will eat some. Both of you. After." Adrian nodded once. He did not argue. Elena understood, watching the small exchange, that this was a man Adrian did not argue with, which was a strange thing to notice, and which told her something about Adrian she had not yet worked out the shape of. Upstairs, In a small bathroom with a clawfoot tub and flowered wallpaper that had gone out of style 40 years ago, Adrian sat her down on a wooden stool under a yellow overhead light. He washed his hands. He opened the first aid kit on the counter. It was a good kit, better than what most households had. Clearly, Henrik had kept up with something. And he took out gauze and antiseptic and a small pair of suture scissors. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I can do it. I've done it 100 times. Let me." "Adrian, Elena, please." She let him. He cleaned the cut on her cheek with a cotton pad soaked in antiseptic. He did it slowly, carefully, his other hand cupping her jaw to hold her still. He had good hands. She had noticed his hands the first night the way she noticed any patient's hands. They were long-fingered, scarred across the knuckles, steady, but she had not noticed them until now in the way that made her notice. Now, how he was using them. He tilted her face into the light. He looked at the cut. He said, quietly, "It will not scar." "I know. It's superficial." "Good." "Adrian?" "Yes." "Your head." He paused with the cotton pad an inch from her cheek. He glanced up into the mirror at the cut over his eyebrow. He seemed surprised momentarily that it was still there. Then he let out a small breath that was almost a laugh. "After yours." "No, now. Sit down. You've been bleeding for an hour." "I have not been bleeding for an hour. I stopped bleeding in the car." "Sit down." He sat. She took the cotton pad from him, and she swung around on the stool, and she went to work on him. And for the first time since she had met him, she was the one standing, and he was the one sitting, and she was the one with her hand on his face. She tilted his chin up. She cleaned the cut. It was shallow, too shallow for stitches, but deep enough that it needed to be closed with a butterfly strip. And she did it the way she had done it 1,000 times, quick and clean, her thumb pressing the skin together, the adhesive going down flat. His eyes stayed on her face the whole time. "You are better at this than my previous doctor." "Your previous doctor was handling gunshot wounds in a basement, Adrian. I hope I'm better than him at cuts." "Yes." "Hold still." "I am holding still." "You're talking." "That is still." She almost laughed. She did not laugh, because laughing was not the right thing for the moment, but something in her face must have done something because his mouth did the almost smile, softer than she had yet seen it, and he closed his eyes for a second while she pressed the edge of the butterfly down. When he opened them, she was already stepping back. "Done." "Thank you." "We should eat." "Yes." They went downstairs. Henrik had set out 2 bowls on the kitchen table. The stew was thick and brown and smelled of thyme. There was a loaf of dark bread already sliced. There was a small plate of butter. There was no wine because Henrik was a man who did not drink, a thing he told Elena while he was ladling her second bowl without her having asked for one, and a thing he told her without explanation. She did not ask. She did not think he would have told her the story, and she did not, on that particular night, need another man's story. They ate. Adrian ate more than she had yet seen him eat. Henrik ate in silence. The cat eventually came over and sat on Elena's foot, warm and heavy, purring with a small broken motor of a purr, and she did not move her foot because she did not want to disturb it. When the stew was gone, Henrik stood up and cleared the bowls without comment, and he said, 2 beds upstairs, second door, third door, towels in the hall. And then he walked out through a door at the back of the kitchen, and they heard him go down the back steps into the yard. Somewhere outside, a dog, which Elena had not known was there, greeted him with a thump of tail against porch. "He will sleep in this barn," Adrian said. "That is his preference." "In the barn?" "He has a room there. It is warm. He has slept in it for 30 years. He sleeps in the house only when his daughter visits. She lives in Minnesota. She visits in the summer." "Okay." "He is an unusual man." "You seem to know him well." "I have known him since he was 22. He was the driver of the first car I ever was in as what I became. He drove that car for 11 years. Then one day he came to me and said, 'I am done. I want a farm. I want a dog. I do not want to be afraid anymore.' I said, 'Go.' He went. That was 15 years ago." He looked down at his hands on the table. "I envied him. I still envy him. I did not think then that a person could just do that, leave, start over. He did. Did anyone try to stop him?" "No, I made sure of that. It was the last purely good thing I did, I think, helping him leave. Everything after was more complicated. She looked at him. She thought about saying several things. She did not say any of them. She got up and she rinsed her bowl in the sink and she said, "Which room is mine?" Third. "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Elena." She did not sleep. The room was small. The bed was narrow, with an iron frame and a quilt so old it was soft. The window looked out on dark fields and, far off, a single red light on top of a radio tower that blinked on and off with the slow steadiness of a heart monitor in a quiet hospital. She lay on her side in the clothes she had been wearing, and she watched the light, and she listened to the house settle around her, the ticks of the old radiator, the small scrabbles of something in the walls that she hoped was a mouse and not anything larger, the occasional low murmur of Adrian's voice from the room next to hers as he took a phone call, and then another, and then another. He was working. Even here, even now, he was working. He was cleaning up what had happened in the penthouse. He was telling men where to go and what to say and who to reach. He was, she understood, making sure that the story the morning papers ran was the story he wanted run. She did not ask herself, for once, whether this was a moral thing. She knew it was not. She was too tired tonight to litigate the question. She only listened to the low tone of his voice through the wall, and the patient-measured way he spoke even at 2 a.m, and she thought, this is what he does. This is what he is. A manager of consequences. A man whose job is to decide what is true after something has happened, and then to make that the only version of the truth that anybody gets to read. She thought, and I am lying in the room next to him. She thought, and I am not leaving. She was not going to lie to herself about that anymore. Around 3 a.m, the voice on the other side of the wall stopped. She heard him get up. She heard him pace for a while. 4 steps one way, 4 steps back. She heard him stop. She heard a long silence. Then a soft knock on her door. "Elena." "I'm awake." The door opened a crack. He was in the doorway, in his black t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair stuck up from where he had been running his hand through it. He did not come in. He stood in the doorway with one hand on the frame. "I did not want to wake you. I wasn't asleep. I know, I heard you not be asleep. You can come in." He came in. He did not come to the bed. He went to the window and stood looking out at the red light on the radio tower with his back to her, his hands in his pockets. "The men who attacked the apartment," he said. "Yes. They are the last of them. The organization that has been trying to move into this city. They committed everything they had tonight. They failed. 3 of the 4 men who were there are dead. The 4th is in the hospital with a spinal injury. He will live. He will not walk. He will talk once he decides whom to talk to. He has a great deal to say. It will not be said to the police. It will be said to the people he reports to, overseas. Those people will understand, from his saying of it, that they have lost this city. They will not try again. Or they may try again, but not in this way, not against me, not against any person connected to me. Imamupus chant. She sat up slowly. "You're saying it's over." "I am saying this particular... Yes, this is over. The part of this that put you on Halston Avenue, the part of this that put a drone outside my window, that is over. And the rest of it." He did not turn around. "What do you mean?" "The rest of you, Adrian. The rest of what you do." There was a long silence. "That is what I came in to talk about." She did not speak. He took his hands out of his pockets. He turned around. He came and sat down on the end of the bed, not close to her at the foot, with a careful distance between them, his elbows on his knees, his hands loosely clasped. He looked at her, and for once he was not performing anything. He was only a tired man at the end of a long night, trying to find the words for something he had not said before. "I have thought for the last week," he said, "about what I want. I have not thought about what I want in a long time. I have thought about what I needed to do, what was expected, what was coming next. I have not thought about this." He gestured vaguely at the room. "About a woman, about a house, about a morning where I am not what I have been. I did not think these things were available to me. I was taught they were not. By my father. by the men who took me in after my father, by the life I walked into as a boy, which I will not pretend I did not walk into with both eyes open, because I did. I walked in, and I did it well, and I became what I am. He looked at his hands. Elena, I cannot undo any of it. I want you to know that I know that. I have done things that cannot be undone. I have given orders that cannot be called back. I have stood in rooms and I have watched men die, and I have gone home afterward and I have slept. I am not a man who can wake up one morning and decide to be new. That is a lie people tell each other in songs. I know it is a lie, and I want you to know that I know, because I will not lie to you. Not about this, not about anything. Okay, but he took a breath. But a man can. He can stop. He can stop adding to what he has done. He can wind down the things he can wind down. He can pass on what can be passed on, to men who will do it in ways I will not any longer do it. He can become small, quiet. He can become a man who reads books and who walks in a garden and who listens to a woman read a Western out loud to him in the evenings, perhaps if she is willing, and who does not add another name to the list of names he has to carry. That is what I want. That is what I am asking you to permit me to try. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am not asking you to love me. I am asking you to let me try, with you near. And if, while I try, you find that you do not want to be near, you will go, and I will not follow. I promised you this. I promise it again. She sat very still. The radiator clicked. Somewhere outside, far off, a dog barked once, and then a second time, and then stopped. Adrian. Yes. The men who killed my brother. He looked up at her. He did not answer for a long time. When he did, he answered carefully, the way a man answered when he knew the answer mattered more than he could say. I did not kill your brother. I didn't ask if you killed him. I know you did not. Did you know the men who did? Another long pause. The man who ordered it is dead. He was killed 7 years ago by men who worked for me, for a reason that had nothing to do with your brother. He had other debts. His voice stayed even. The man who pulled the trigger is in a federal prison in Indiana. He was not put there by me. He was put there by a prosecutor named McGregor, who does not like men like me, and who was in many ways correct not to. He has 18 years left on his sentence. He will not get out alive. He is not well. I had nothing to do with any of this. But yes, I knew them, both of them. Your brother's name was not one I heard at the time. It would have meant nothing to me at the time. It means something now, because it is your brother's. That is all I can say, Elena. I will not lie to you and say I did not know them. I knew them. I knew many men like them. I will know more. She closed her eyes. She had prepared herself, lying in the car earlier, for 1,000 versions of this answer. She had prepared for I do not know, and for no one tells me these things, and for a deflection, a dodge, a sideways. She had not prepared for the plain thing. The plain thing was harder. It was also, she realized, breathing through it, the thing she needed. The plain thing was what she could live with. The lie, however well meant, she could not have. Thank you, she said. For what? For not lying. I told you I would not. About this, I will not. Okay. Okay? Okay. She opened her eyes. She looked at him. He was watching her. There was something in his face that was almost not hope. He was not a man who hoped, but something adjacent to it, a kind of attentive waiting. I'm not going to live in a tower, she said. No. I'm not going to let men follow me when I go to the grocery store. No. I'm going to keep being a nurse. Yes, of course, at St. Jerome. If you want, I want, then yes. And she stopped. She took a breath. I'm going to go home for Christmas, to Phoenix, to see my mother, to see Javier. I'm going alone. I'm not taking you, and I'm not taking any of your men, and I'm not going to explain any of this to my family because they wouldn't understand, and I wouldn't want them to. When I come back, then we'll see. Yes, That's what I'm offering you. It is more than I have any right to ask. Adrian, yes. Stop saying that. Saying what? That it's more than you deserve. I'm tired of it. I know what you've done. You know what you've done. We both know. If I'm here, if I'm offering you this, it's because I'm doing it with my eyes open. Don't make me into somebody who's saving you. I'm not saving you. Nobody saves anybody. I'm choosing. That's all. And you are too. So stop telling me I'm giving you something I shouldn't. That's my decision. He looked at her. He did not say anything for a long moment. Then he nodded, once, a small, quiet nod, and he said, Yes, Elena. Good. Elena. Yeah. May I? He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. She could see what he was asking. He was asking the oldest question in the world, and he was asking it the way a man asks it when he has never really had the right to ask it before. And she thought about it for what felt like a long time, but was probably only 2 seconds. And she said, Come here. He came. He did not come quickly. He moved up the bed the way a man moved across a frozen river, testing his weight with each step, not trusting it. When he got to her, he stopped. He looked at her. She put her hand up, very slowly, and she touched the butterfly strip over his eyebrow, which she had put there 2 hours ago, and which was still holding, and she said, I told you to hold still. I am holding still. He leaned his forehead against hers. That was all. He did not kiss her. She did not kiss him. They sat on the narrow bed in the old farmhouse with their foreheads pressed together and their eyes closed, and they breathed. And for a long time, that was the only thing in the room, their breathing, and the tick of the radiator, and the red light blinking out on the tower. After a while, he said very quietly, Thank you. For what? For not being afraid of me. She opened her eyes. She pulled back. She looked at him, and her voice came out tired and true, and not at all the voice of a woman in a movie. Adrian, I was afraid of you. I have been afraid of you off and on for 2 weeks. I am a little afraid of you right now. That hasn't gone away. It's not going to go away tomorrow. That's the honest answer. But I'm staying anyway. That's the thing. That's what you're getting. Yes. I don't want you to think I don't want to be a story you tell yourself about a good woman who saw past the bad man. I'm not a good woman. I'm a tired one. You're not a good man. We both know. I am here. That's all. That's all I can give you. Yes, Elena. Okay. Okay. She closed her eyes. She slept finally, with her head against his shoulder, in her clothes, on top of the quilt. He did not sleep. He stayed awake, she knew, because she could feel him breathing, and his breathing did not go the way a sleeping man's went. He stayed awake the rest of the night and into the morning, and he did not move. He did not want to wake her. Well, in the morning she flew to Phoenix. Not that morning. 2 mornings later, Marco drove her to the airport. Adrian did not. He understood without being told that she needed to arrive alone, without anyone behind her, without any version of his world visible from any of the windows of her mother's house. She took her own backpack. She wore her own clothes. The cut on her cheek had begun to heal. Her mother met her at the curb of arrivals in a red minivan that she had been driving since Elena was in high school, and Javier was in the passenger seat, and her mother got out of the van and looked at her daughter and did not say a thing about the cut, only took her face in both hands and looked at her for a long time, and then pulled her into a hug that lasted longer than any hug they had shared in 10 years. You came. I came. Your grandmother's sister is doing fine, by the way. Mrs. Oxenen called back to tell me. She sounded very relieved. She is a very nice woman, your nurse supervisor. Yes, Mommy, she is. She told me you were a good daughter. Elena laughed. It came out wet. She lied to you, Mommy. She did not lie to me. You are a good daughter. You are a complicated daughter. But you are good. Your brother was good also, complicated also. It is a family trait. Get in the car. Javier is starving. He has been talking about lunch since we left the house. Elena got in the car. They drove home through Phoenix in the hard white sun, and Javier told her about his kids and his wife and the bathroom remodel he was doing himself and the mistake he had made with the tile. And her mother drove with one hand on the wheel and the other on Elena's arm, not gripping, not holding, just resting there, as if to make sure Elena did not disappear. Elena did not disappear. Elena stayed for Christmas Eve, for the Mass she went to with her mother, not because she believed in it, but because her mother did. For the long Christmas morning with Javier's 3 children climbing over the furniture, for the afternoon in the backyard with her mother, who sat in a plastic chair and peeled oranges and finally, talked to her about Mateo, about who he had been as a small boy, about the way he had wanted to be a firefighter when he was 5, about the time he had broken his arm falling out of a tree and had not cried, about how he had cried later, at 11, because his dog had died, and how that had been the last time Elena's mother had seen him cry in her life. Her mother said, "I have been angry at you, Elena, for leaving. I was angry because I thought you were running. I think now you were not running. I think you were fighting. I think you have been fighting for 10 years. I would like you to stop, if you can. I would like you to be tired for a while. I would like you to let yourself be tired." Elena held her mother's hand. She said, "I am tired, Mommy." Her mother said, "I know, mija." She flew back to Brightmoor on the 3rd of January. Adrian met her at the airport, not at the curb, at the gate inside the terminal, which he had no business being able to do and which she did not ask him how he had done. He was in a wool coat and a soft dark sweater, and he had no men with him, and he looked nervous in a way she had never seen him look, like a man who was not certain he would be recognized. She recognized him. She walked up to him, and she dropped her backpack at her feet, and she put her arms around his neck, and she stood there for a while. He did not say anything. He did not need to. In the spring, she moved out of the apartment above the laundromat, not into his tower. They did not move in together, not then, not for a while. She moved into a small bungalow in a neighborhood on the edge of the city with a yard and a fig tree and a front porch she could sit on in the evenings. She bought it herself, with her own money, on a loan from a bank whose name she would not later remember. He did not help her buy it. He offered. She said no. He did not argue. He only said yes, Elena, the way he had learned to say it, and he came over on weekends and fixed the back step and the loose shutter and the thing in the kitchen sink that had been leaking since before she bought the house. He closed most of his businesses over the course of that year. Not all. Some he did not have the power to close, only the power to hand over. And the men he handed them over to were not, she knew, men she would have wanted to have coffee with. But a great deal of it he simply let go. He sold 3 buildings. He dissolved 2 companies. He spent a great deal of time that year on phone calls in a language Elena did not speak, and each phone call seemed to end with him looking a little lighter and a little more tired, the way a man looks when he has set something heavy down after carrying it a long time. Mrs. Oksanen came to the bungalow once a week for a while to bring food, then less. Then she retired to a small house in a part of the state Elena had never been to, where she raised bees. She sent Elena a jar of honey every Christmas for the rest of her life. The honey was very good. Henrik, the farmer, Elena met a few more times. His daughter from Minnesota did eventually meet his new friend, as he called Elena. Not Adrian's, she noticed, but his own. The daughter was a high school teacher. She was Elena's age. They liked each other. Small worlds sometimes still surprised Elena. The men who had attacked the penthouse, the one who had survived, he did talk to the people he reported to overseas, and those people did not try again. The story Adrian had wanted run in the morning papers did run, and it was that a faulty gas line on a lower floor had caused a pressure event that had damaged the top of the building, and nobody at the building contradicted it, and the repairs were completed within 4 months, and no charges were ever filed, and the FBI, who had been trying for 6 years to put Adrian Volkov away, closed 2 of their 3 open investigations on him that summer, not because they were satisfied, but because their confidential informants had all suddenly gone quiet and, in some cases, moved to other countries. And the case had become, as the lead agent put it in an internal memo, logistically inadvisable to pursue at this time. The 3rd investigation stayed open. It stayed open for a long time. Elena knew about it. Adrian knew she knew. They did not discuss it often. It was, they had decided, the price of the life they had chosen, that there would always be a file somewhere with his name on it, and that one of them might have to answer for it someday, and that they would deal with that day when it came and not before. She kept nursing. She worked at St. Jerome for another 4 years. Through 2 more hurricanes and 1 bad flu season and 1,000 ordinary nights of a job that had never, in her life, been glamorous. And she stitched up drunk college boys and held the hands of old men whose daughters were and were not coming. And she never, once, told anyone at work who she went home to. Patel figured it out the first winter and did not say anything. Ramirez figured it out and gave her a long look in the hallway once and said only, "Vance, take care of yourself." Chen figured it out and asked her one night in the break room, "Are you happy?" And Elena said, "Some days. Most days. I'm more myself than I used to be." And Chen had nodded and not asked any more questions, and they had kept being friends. She did not, in the end, ever fully forgive him. He did not fully forgive himself. That was the bargain. Forgiveness, she came to understand, was not the currency they were going to use between them. They were going to use something else, a steady daily choosing, a small accumulation of days in which each of them chose to stay, to speak, to sit across from the other at a kitchen table, to see the other for what they were and not for what they might have been, and not to pretend otherwise. It was not a beautiful thing. The way people in songs said love was beautiful. It was not always gentle. There were bad nights. There were weeks when she slept at her bungalow alone and did not answer his calls and needed simply to be a woman in a small house who did not belong to anybody. There were nights when he sat up alone with things she could not help him with and did not try to. They did not either of them become new people. They only became smaller, slower, stranger to their old selves. One Sunday, 3 years after the night in the farmhouse, she woke up in her own bed in her own house, and the sun was coming in through the kitchen window, and there was a fig tree in her yard. And a man who had once been called the Wolf was sitting at her kitchen table in a gray sweatshirt, drinking her coffee, reading a newspaper with his reading glasses halfway down his nose. And he looked up when she came out of the bedroom and he said, not as a line from a movie, but as an ordinary question from an ordinary morning, "Eggs?" "Oh." And she said, "Yes, please." And she sat down and she thought, without the thought being dramatic or sad or triumphant, only quiet, only clear. This is my life. I chose it. I'm going to keep choosing it. Outside on the fig tree, a cardinal landed and cocked its head at the window and flew off again. The coffee was good. The eggs, when they came, were fine. The morning went on, the way mornings did, and the day after that, and the year. Some stories she had learned over the years did not end with anybody being saved. The idea that one person could come into another person's life and scrub the darkness out of them like a stain. That was a children's idea. She had believed it, once the way children did, when she was 21 and angry at the world and certain that nothing good could come out of anything bad. She did not believe it anymore. What she believed now was smaller and harder and truer. That people were not saved by other people. That what another person could do at the outside limit was stand next to you while you did the work yourself. That staying sometimes was the only real tenderness. That a woman could look at a man whose hands had done terrible things and decide, with her eyes open, that she was going to be in the room while he tried every day for the rest of his life, not to do those things again. That was not redemption. Redemption was a word from a book she no longer read. This was only choosing. This was only staying. This was only the daily small decision to be honest with a person who had not always been honest, and to let them be honest back. It was enough. On a night very much later, Elena was 50 by then, her hair gone half gray at the temples, her hands still steady as she had always kept them. She sat on the porch of the bungalow in the dark, with Adrian beside her, and the fig tree in the yard had grown tall enough to touch the gutter, and she thought about the night she had walked into Trauma 3 and put her hands on her hips at a dangerous man, and she thought about how small and young she had been, and how certain, and how wrong about most of what she had been certain of, and how one of the things she had been right about, the one thing, had been the first word she had ever said to him. No, she thought, watching an ordinary moon come up over an ordinary neighborhood. That was the right word. It was the right word the night I met him. It would have been the right word most of the nights after. Also, for most of the women he had met before. For me, somehow, it stopped being the right word. I do not know exactly why. I do not know if I will ever know. But I know it stopped. And I know I chose what came next. And I know that choosing is the only kind of love I trust at the end, and that the other kind, the kind that happens to you, the kind in songs, was never going to be mine. Beside her, in the dark, he reached over without looking and he took her hand, the way he had taken it in the back of a car 20 years earlier, and she let him. She did not pull her hand away. She never did. The end.